The iron gates of Ironridge Manor didn't creak, they screamed. Lydia Hartwell stood in the downpour, mud clinging to her torn traveling cloak, and watched a man she'd never met destroy her future with 6 words. "You're not the woman I was promised." Duke Rowan Blackmore didn't even look at her when he said it, just turned his back, rainwater streaming off his shoulders like he was dismissing a servant who'd brought the wrong tea. 4 days. 4 days of hell on frozen roads to get here, and he couldn't spare her 10 seconds of eye contact. The butler held out her returned engagement ring on a silver tray, as if the metal might contaminate his gloved fingers. Lydia took it. Then she did something that would change everything. She smiled. "Keep it," she said, dropping the ring into a puddle at the butler's feet. "I wouldn't marry you now if you begged." Then she walked back into the rain, choosing nothing over everything, and became the first woman in Blackmore history to reject a duke before he could finish rejecting her. This is her story. Stay until the end. Comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this tale travels. And if you want to know whether she ever makes him beg, hit that like button. The carriage had smelled like death for the last 2 days. Not actual death. Lydia wasn't that dramatic, despite what her stepmother liked to say, but something close. Mildew, rotting straw, and the particular stench of horses that had been worked too hard in bad weather. The driver, a man whose name she'd never learned, had stopped apologizing for the condition somewhere around hour 30. Now he just grunted when they hit ruts deep enough to rattle her teeth. Lydia pressed her forehead against the grimy window and watched the landscape turn hostile. The gentle hills of her home county had given way to something meaner. Sharp rocks jutted from fields like broken bones. Trees grew twisted, their branches clawing at the gray sky. Even the birds sounded different here. Harsh, guttural cries instead of song. Ironridge. They called it that because the land was hard and unforgiving, or so the innkeeper had told her last night, his eyes full of pity she didn't want. Duke's territory, he'd said, like that explained the bleakness. Not a place for soft folk. Lydia wasn't soft. She'd spent the last 6 months learning exactly how unsoft she could be. 6 months since her father died and left her at the mercy of his second wife. 6 months of Catherine's tight-lipped disapproval, of eating in the kitchen instead of the dining room, of watching her half-sister Vivian parade around in dresses that used to be Lydia's. 6 months that had led to this, a marriage arrangement she'd had no part in making, to a man she'd never met, in a place that looked like it wanted to kill her. The carriage lurched, Lydia's bag slid off the seat and hit the floor, spilling its contents. She didn't bend to collect them. What was the point? 3 dresses, all practical wool, nothing fine. A book with half its pages missing. The miniature portrait of her mother that Catherine had accidentally stepped on, cracking the frame. That was what remained of Lydia Hartwell at 23. Broken things that nobody wanted. "We're close," the driver shouted, his voice barely audible over the rain that had started an hour ago. "See the manor through the trees?" Lydia wiped the condensation from the window. Ironridge Manor rose from the landscape like a threat. It wasn't beautiful, not in any way that mattered. The stone was dark, almost black in the rain. The windows reflected nothing, just drank in the gray light and gave nothing back. Towers jutted at odd angles, like whoever built the place couldn't decide between fortress and home and had chosen violence instead. This was where she'd live, where she'd become a duchess. The word felt ridiculous in her mouth. Her, a duchess. Lydia, who'd been demoted to sleeping in what used to be a storage room. Lydia, whose own stepmother had told her she should be grateful anyone wanted her at all. Considering your circumstances. The circumstances being no money, no connections, a father who'd gambled away their estate before drinking himself to death, and a face that was pleasant enough but would never launch ships or stop hearts. Serviceable, Catherine had called her once, like she was a sturdy pair of boots. The carriage stopped so abruptly that Lydia's head hit the window frame. She bit back a curse. Ladies didn't curse, Catherine's voice reminded her, even in her own head, and gathered her scattered belongings. The door opened. Rain poured in. "Out you go, miss," the driver said, not unkindly. He'd been hired by the Duke's people, part of the arrangement. He'd deliver her and collect his fee, and Lydia would become someone else's problem. She stepped down into mud that immediately soaked through her boots. The manor's entrance was up a flight of stone steps, wide enough for 6 people to walk abreast. At the top stood a man in impeccable butler's livery, holding an umbrella that he made no move to share. "Miss Hartwell?" His voice carried the kind of disdain that took years to perfect. Yes. You're expected, though perhaps not in that condition. Lydia looked down at herself. Her cloak was splattered with road mud. Her dress, the nicest one she owned, had a tear along the hem from when she'd caught it on the carriage door that morning. Her hair, which she'd tried to pin up properly, had mostly given up and was now clasping wetly against her neck. She looked like exactly what she was, a girl with no money and no choices, arriving at a man's door because she had nowhere else to go. The roads were difficult, she said evenly. Evidently. The butler turned. Follow me, and try not to drip on the carpets. The entrance hall was vast and cold. Dark wood panels climbed the walls. Portraits of grim-faced people stared down with expressions that suggested they'd never smiled once in their entire lives, and were furious that Lydia might attempt it. Her footsteps echoed. Somewhere in the depths of the house, a door slammed. Wait here, the butler said, gesturing to a spot on the marble floor, as if she were a dog. His Grace will see you shortly. Then he left her standing there, dripping. Lydia counted the portraits. 14 in the entrance hall alone. 14 dead Blackmores, all looking like they'd died angry about it. She wondered if there was a family requirement: marry into the line, develop permanent scowl, die without joy. Would her portrait hang here someday? Would she learn that expression, the one that said, I've given up on happiness and so should you? Footsteps approached. Not the butler's measured tread, but something heavier. Boots on marble, coming fast. A man rounded the corner and stopped. This was Duke Rowan Blackmore. It had to be. He was tall, taller than Lydia expected, and she'd expected tall. Dark hair, recently wet from the rain. Sharp features that might have been handsome on someone who smiled, but he wasn't smiling. He wore riding clothes, mud on his boots just like hers, and he was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Not anger, exactly. Something worse. Disappointment. You're Lydia Hartwell, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Your Grace. She dropped into a curtsy that Catherine had made her practice 50 times. Her knee hit a puddle of her own making. He didn't tell her to rise, just stood there, studying her like she was a horse he was considering buying and had already decided against. You're not what I expected. The words hit like a slap, but Lydia kept her face neutral. I apologize for my appearance. The journey was... I don't mean your appearance. His voice was flat, factual. Somehow, that made it worse. I mean you. You're not the woman I was promised. Lydia's stomach dropped. I don't understand. The arrangement was made for Vivian Catherine Hartwell, daughter of the late Richard Hartwell. That's not you. Vivian is my half-sister, Lydia said carefully. There must be some mistake. The letters I received were sent to you by mistake. He cut her off like she was wasting his time. My steward handled the correspondence. He clearly confused the names, but the betrothal papers list Vivian, not you. The floor felt unsteady. Lydia's fingers had gone numb. My stepmother said, she told me the arrangement was for me. She said you'd agreed to, then your stepmother lied. Rowan's eyes were the color of slate, cold and hard. Or perhaps she saw an opportunity to rid herself of an unwanted burden. Either way, this is not acceptable. Unwanted burden. The words hung in the air between them, more honest than anything Catherine had ever said to Lydia's face. I see. Lydia's voice came out steady. She was proud of that. What would you like me to do? Return home. I'll have my steward arrange transportation and compensation for your trouble. I don't have a home. Something flickered across his face. Excuse me? My father's estate was sold to pay his debts. I've been living with my stepmother, but... Lydia stopped, took a breath, started again. I was told this marriage was my only option, that without it, I'd have no prospects and no means of support. So no, Your Grace, I don't have a home to return to. Rowan's jaw tightened. That's not my concern. I understand. Do you? He took a step closer. Because you're standing in my house, dripping on my floor, expecting me to solve a problem you brought with you. I don't know what story your stepmother sold you, but I made an arrangement for a specific woman with specific qualities. You are not that woman. What qualities? The question came out before Lydia could stop it. That's none of your business. It's entirely my business. You're rejecting me without even, I'm not rejecting you. I'm correcting a mistake. That's a lovely way to phrase it. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Nothing, Your Grace. Lydia dropped her gaze to the floor, to the puddle she was standing in. I apologize for the confusion. If you'd be kind enough to provide transportation to the nearest town, I'll make my own arrangements from there. The nearest town is 15 miles away. Then I'll walk 15 miles. In this weather? I've survived worse. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed. 4 in the afternoon, and Lydia's entire future had just collapsed in the time it took a man to say a few careless words. Jenkins! Rowan's voice cracked like a whip. The butler appeared instantly. He must have been waiting just out of sight. Your Grace? Return Miss Hartwell's ring and arrange for her departure, tomorrow morning, first light. Very good, sir. Jenkins pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and held it out to Lydia on a silver tray, like her touch might contaminate it. The ring inside was beautiful. White gold, 3 small sapphires, simple and elegant. Lydia had never owned anything half so fine. She took it. The metal was cold against her palm. Keep your belongings with you tonight, Rowan said. You'll stay in the East Wing guest room. Meals will be brought up. I'd prefer if we didn't cross paths again. How considerate. His eyes flashed. I'm being more than fair, considering I'm an unwanted burden who arrived at your door by mistake. Lydia met his gaze. Yes, Your Grace, you're a paragon of generosity. Watch your tone. Or what? You'll throw me out tonight instead of tomorrow? She laughed, and the sound surprised even her. I have nothing left to lose. You've already made that clear. Rowan stared at her. For the first time since he'd walked into the hall, he looked uncertain. Jenkins, he said finally, show her to the room. Of course, Your Grace. Lydia followed the butler up a staircase that curved like a spine. 3 floors up, down a corridor lined with more disapproving portraits, to a door at the very end. The room inside was nice enough, clean, cold, impersonal. Supper at 6, Jenkins said. Please don't wander the house. Wouldn't dream of it. He left. The lock didn't click. She wasn't a prisoner, technically, but it felt like one anyway. Lydia set her bag on the bed and went to the window. The rain was getting worse. She could barely see the grounds through the downpour, just dark shapes that might have been gardens or might have been graves. With this family, either seemed likely. She pulled out the ring and held it up to the fading light. This was supposed to be her future, this small, beautiful thing. Security, a name, a place in the world. Instead, it was just another thing that didn't belong to her. Lydia thought about Catherine's face when she'd announced the engagement. Not happiness, Catherine didn't do happiness, but satisfaction. The look of a woman solving a problem. And Vivian. Sweet, vapid Vivian, who'd hugged Lydia and said, I'm so glad it's you and not me. I could never live somewhere so grim. They'd known. Both of them had known this wasn't meant for her. The fury came suddenly, hot and bright. Lydia wanted to throw the ring out the window, wanted to march back downstairs and make Rowan Blackmore explain exactly what made Vivian so much more valuable than her. But she didn't. Because the truth was worse than his cruelty. He was right. Vivian had a dowry. Vivian had connections through Catherine's family. Vivian was pretty in a way that made men stupid, all golden curls and wide blue eyes. And Lydia? Lydia was serviceable, sturdy boots. She sat on the bed, still holding the ring, and waited for the anger to fade into something more useful. It didn't. Supper came at 6 on a tray carried by a maid who wouldn't meet Lydia's eyes. Bread, cheese, cold chicken. Food for someone passing through. Nothing warm, nothing welcoming. Lydia ate mechanically. The bread was good, at least. Better than what she'd been getting at Catherine's house, where the best cuts went to Vivian and Lydia got whatever remained. After eating, she tried to read, but the words wouldn't settle. Her mind kept circling back to the same questions. Where would she go? She had no money beyond the few coins in her bag. No friends who could take her in. Catherine had made sure of that, slowly cutting Lydia off from anyone who might have helped. There were workhouses, factories. Women with no options ended up in those places. Or worse. Lydia had heard the stories. Girls who thought they were being hired as maids and ended up in brothels. Women who disappeared into cities and were never heard from again. She set the book aside and stared at the ceiling. The plaster had cracks, thin lines spreading out from the corners like the house itself was breaking apart. Fitting. She must have dozed off eventually because she woke to darkness and the sound of voices in the hall. Don't care what the arrangement said. He can't just send her away like this. A woman's voice. Angry. It's not our place to question His Grace's decisions. Jenkins, unmistakable. It's cruel and you know it. That girl came all this way. That woman came here under false pretenses. She's 23 years old and has nowhere to go. Lydia sat up, pressed her ear to the door. Mrs. Blackmore, please. Jenkins sounded tired. The Duke has made his decision. She leaves tomorrow. Fine. Then I'll speak to him myself. I wouldn't advise. I don't care what you'd advise. Footsteps retreated. Lydia heard Jenkins mutter something under his breath that sounded like a curse. Mrs. Blackmore. Rowan's mother? Sister? Some other relative forced to live in this miserable pile of stones? It didn't matter. Whoever she was, she'd lose the argument. People like Rowan Blackmore didn't change their minds because someone asked nicely. Lydia lay back down but couldn't sleep. The room was too quiet. At Catherine's house, she could always hear something. Vivian's off-key humming, the cook arguing with the housekeeper, the creak of floorboards. Here, there was nothing but her own breathing and the rain. She thought about her father, not the drunk he'd become, but the man he'd been before her mother died. He used to tell her stories at bedtime, made-up adventures about a brave girl who fought dragons and saved kingdoms. You're going to do great things, Liddy, he'd say. I know it. Then her mother died, and he'd remarried too quickly, and Catherine had brought her own daughter into their home, and everything had slowly rotted. By the end, her father could barely look at Lydia. She reminded him too much of what he'd lost. I'm sorry, he'd said once, near the end, when he was too drunk to remember he wasn't supposed to apologize. I'm so sorry, Liddy. She'd never found out what exactly he was apologizing for. All of it, probably. Lydia rolled onto her side and pulled the thin blanket up to her chin. Tomorrow she'd leave. She'd figure something out. She always did, even if she had no idea how. Morning came too early and too gray. Lydia dressed in her least ruined dress and packed her bag. It didn't take long. She barely had anything to pack. A knock at the door. Miss Hartwell, the carriage is ready. She opened it to find a different servant, younger than Jenkins. He looked nervous. This way, please. The house looked different in daylight. Still grim, but less actively threatening. The portraits were just paintings, not judges. The dark wood was just wood. Lydia followed the servant down the stairs and through the entrance hall. Rowan was there. He stood near the front door, dressed for riding. He didn't look like he'd slept, either. There were shadows under his eyes, and his jaw was tight. Miss Hartwell. Your Grace? The carriage will take you to Millbrook. It's the closest town with an inn. My steward has arranged for 3 weeks' lodging and provided funds for your immediate needs. He held out a small purse. Lydia didn't take it. That's very generous. It's adequate. And after 3 weeks? His expression didn't change. That's not my concern. Of course not. She reached for the purse. Their fingers didn't touch. He pulled back too quickly for that. The purse was heavier than she expected. More than adequate, probably. Enough to feel like charity instead of compensation. Thank you, she said. Because what else could she say? The ring. Right. Of course. She pulled it from her pocket and held it out. But instead of taking it, Rowan gestured to Jenkins, who stepped forward with that same silver tray, like she was contaminated, like her touch might spoil the metal. Something inside Lydia snapped. She dropped the ring. It hit the tray with a sharp ping, bounced, and fell to the floor. Everyone froze. The ring rolled across the marble. Came to rest in a puddle of rainwater near the door. It was still raining. Of course it was still raining. Oops, Lydia said flatly. Jenkins made a strangled sound. Rowan's eyes went ice cold. That was childish, he said. Was it? Lydia picked up her bag. I thought it was appropriate. You treat me like I'm dirty, I act like I'm clumsy. Everyone gets what they expect. I have treated you with nothing but courtesy. You've treated me like a problem. There's a difference. You are a problem. The words came out sharp. You arrived at my home claiming a position that doesn't belong to you based on arrangements you had no part in making, expecting me to… What? Just accept the situation? Marry you anyway because it would be convenient? I expected basic human decency. Clearly that was asking too much. Rowan took a step toward her. You know nothing about me or my circumstances. And you know nothing about mine. But you didn't ask, did you? You just decided I wasn't good enough and threw money at me to make the inconvenience go away. What did you want me to do? His voice rose. Explain myself to you? Justify my decisions? You're not my betrothed. You're not my responsibility. You're a stranger who showed up on my doorstep in the middle of a storm that you invited. I didn't invite you. The words echoed in the massive hall. Lydia felt her face flush, felt the old familiar shame creeping up her spine. The same feeling she got every time Catherine looked at her like she was something scraped off a shoe. But under the shame, rage. Pure, clean, burning rage. You're right, she said quietly. You didn't invite me. You invited someone better. Someone with money and connections and the right last name. Someone who wouldn't be an embarrassment. I get it. I've been an embarrassment my whole life. One more time doesn't make a difference. She walked past him toward the door. Wait, no. She didn't look back. You've made yourself clear, Your Grace. I'm leaving. That's what you wanted. Miss Hartwell, Lydia. What? She turned, met his eyes. My name is Lydia, not Miss Hartwell, not that woman, not the problem. Lydia. You might try using it since you're so concerned with courtesy. Then she walked out into the rain. The carriage was waiting. The driver from yesterday sat hunched on the box, looking miserable. Lydia climbed in without help, pulled the door shut. Through the rain-streaked window, she could see Rowan still standing in the doorway. He wasn't moving, just watching. She wanted to look away, wanted to be the bigger person. Instead, she met his gaze and held it until the carriage lurched into motion. Only then did she let herself cry. Not for him, not for the marriage that wasn't hers to lose, for herself. For every time someone had looked at her and found her wanting, for every moment she'd had to smile and swallow shame and pretend it didn't hurt. The tears came hot and angry, and Lydia let them fall. She was done pretending. Millbrook was exactly what she expected, small, gray, and deeply uninterested in her problems. The inn was called the Rusty Bell, which said everything about the town's ambitions. The innkeeper, a broad woman with flour in her hair, took Rowan's money without comment and showed Lydia to a room that smelled like old cabbage. Meals are extra, she said. Breakfast at 6, supper at 7. Miss either one and you don't eat. No candles after 10. No visitors, no noise. Understood. The woman left. Lydia sat on the bed and stared at the wall. 3 weeks. She had 3 weeks to figure out the rest of her life. The money Rowan had given her was substantial, more than she'd expected. Enough to rent this room, eat basic meals, and maybe buy a few necessities. But after that, she could try to find work. But doing what? She had no skills beyond basic household management and a decent education. She could read and write and do figures. She could play piano badly and speak serviceable French. None of which mattered in a place like Millbrook. Factory work, then. Or laundry. Or... Stop it, she said aloud. The panic was trying to creep in. The same panic that had grabbed her after her father died, when Catherine had sat her down and explained very clearly that Lydia had no value and no prospects and should be grateful for whatever scraps she was thrown. Lydia had believed it then, had let herself become smaller and smaller until she fit into the space Catherine carved out for her. But something had changed on those manor steps. When Rowan Blackmore had looked at her and said she wasn't good enough, Lydia had felt something shift. Not acceptance, not resignation. Fury. She was done being grateful for scraps, done shrinking, done apologizing for existing. If the world thought she was worthless, fine. She'd prove them wrong. She just had to figure out how. The answer came 3 days later, from an unexpected source. Lydia had been in the inn's common room, nursing a cup of tea and trying to make sense of the local newspaper, when a woman approached her table. She was older, 50 maybe, with gray hair pulled back severely and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. "You're the girl from Ironridge Manor," she said without preamble. Lydia's stomach sank. News travels fast. It's a small town, and when a duke sends away a bride after one night, people talk. The woman pulled out a chair and sat without asking. I'm Mrs. Adelaide Finch. I run the schoolhouse. Lydia Hartwell. I know. Adelaide leaned forward. I also know you can read and write and probably do figures. Am I right? Yes? Good. My assistant teacher ran off with a merchant last week, left me with 30 children and no help. I can offer room and board plus a small salary. Not much, but more than nothing. Interested? Lydia blinked. You want me to teach? Unless you have better prospects, do you? No? Then say yes before I regret asking. It wasn't a request. It was a command wrapped in bluntness. Lydia found herself smiling. Yes, excellent. Get your things. School starts at 8 tomorrow, and I'll need you there by 7 to prepare. Adelaide stood and was halfway to the door before Lydia found her voice again. Why are you helping me? The older woman paused, turned. Because I've seen how this world treats women with no options. It chews them up and spits them out. And because you didn't beg. Her eyes were sharp. When the Duke rejected you, you could have pleaded, could have made yourself smaller, but according to my sources, you dropped his ring in a puddle and walked out with your spine straight. Your sources? I have friends in unusual places. Adelaide's smile was thin. So yes, Miss Hartwell, I'm helping you. Try not to make me regret it. Then she was gone, and Lydia was left holding a future she hadn't expected. It wasn't much. It wasn't the security of a ducal marriage, but it was hers. And that was something. The schoolhouse was smaller than Lydia expected and in worse condition than Adelaide had admitted. The roof leaked in 3 places. The windows were so grimy that even on bright days, not that there were many, the room stayed dim. 28 children ranging from 5 to 14 sat crammed on benches built for 20, and half of them looked like they hadn't eaten a proper meal in weeks. They're coal miners' children mostly, Adelaide said on that first morning, her tone matter-of-fact. Families scraping by. Some of them walk 3 miles to get here. Don't expect gratitude. They're here because the law says they have to be, not because they want to learn their letters. She was right. The children stared at Lydia with expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hostility. One boy in the back, maybe 12, built like he'd been working since he could walk, crossed his arms and glared. You the Duke's leftover? He called out. The room went silent. Adelaide's hand cracked across her desk. Thomas Hewitt, that mouth of yours will get you expelled. Just asking a question, ma'am. Ask it with respect or don't ask at all. Adelaide's voice could have stripped paint. This is Miss Hartwell. She'll be teaching mathematics and literature. You'll treat her with the same courtesy you show me, which admittedly isn't much, but it's a start. A few children snickered. Thomas slouched lower but didn't look away from Lydia. She met his stare. Yes, she said clearly. The Duke didn't want me, so now I'm here. Any other questions? Thomas blinked. Apparently he hadn't expected honesty. Why'd he reject you? A small girl in the front asked. She couldn't have been more than 6. Emma! Adelaide's voice sharpened. It's all right. Lydia set down the book she'd been carrying. He was expecting someone else, someone richer and prettier. I wasn't her, so he sent me away. Sometimes people don't want you, and that's their choice. Doesn't mean you stop existing. The little girl thought about this. My dad didn't want me either. Mum says he left before I was born. Emma, that's enough. Then your mum wanted you, Lydia said. That counts. Emma smiled. It was gap-toothed and sweet and made something in Lydia's chest ache. Thomas was still glaring, but with less conviction now. Right then, Adelaide said briskly. Miss Hartwell, you'll take the younger ones for reading. I'll handle the older students with mathematics. We'll switch after midday meal. The day blurred into controlled chaos. Children who couldn't sit still, a fight over a broken pencil, 2 girls who cried because they couldn't remember their multiplication tables. Thomas, who read haltingly but with surprising comprehension when Lydia cornered him during break. You're good at this, she told him. Reading's useless in the mines. Maybe, but you won't be in the mines forever. Yes, I will. He said it like a fact, like the sky was blue and water was wet and Thomas Hewitt would spend his life underground until it killed him. Lydia wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he had options, that education mattered, all the pretty lies adults told children. Instead, she said, maybe you're right, but if you're not, you'll be ready. He looked at her like she was stupid. Then he took the book she offered and went back to his bench. That night, Lydia collapsed on the narrow bed in the room above the schoolhouse. Adelaide's room and board turned out to be a converted storage space, with a bed, a chair, and a basin, and stared at the ceiling. Her back hurt. Her voice was hoarse. She'd eaten nothing but bread and cheese because that's all Adelaide had offered. And yet, she'd made it through a day, done something useful, earned her keep. It wasn't much, but it was hers. The thought carried her into sleep. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm of early mornings and exhausted nights. Lydia learned the children's names, their habits, which ones needed gentle encouragement, and which ones responded better to blunt honesty. Thomas warmed to her by degrees, started bringing questions about the books they read. Once he even smiled when she made a joke about the absurdity of teaching geography in a town where most people never traveled more than 10 miles from where they were born. "What's the point of knowing about places we'll never see?" he'd asked. "What's the point of anything?" Lydia had replied. "We're all going to die eventually. Might as well learn something interesting first." Adelaide, overhearing, had actually laughed. The older woman was a puzzle, sharp-tongued and demanding, but fair. She never asked about Lydia's past beyond what was necessary, never treated her with pity or condescension. "You're doing better than I expected," she said one evening as they cleaned the schoolroom. "Most girls with your background would have quit by now." "What background is that?" "Gently bred. Educated for drawing rooms, not work." Adelaide dumped dirty water out the window without checking if anyone was below. "But you've got spine." "I like that." "I didn't have a choice." "Everyone has choices. You chose not to break. That matters." Lydia scrubbed harder at the chalkboard, uncomfortable with the praise. "Why'd you really hire me?" she asked. Adelaide was quiet for a moment, then, "Because I was you once. Different circumstances, same position. Young, alone, rejected by a man who decided I wasn't good enough." Her voice stayed level, but something underneath it had edges. "The difference is, I had no one to throw me a rope. So when I see a girl drowning, I throw one, that's all." "What happened?" "To the man who rejected you? He married someone appropriate, had 4 children, died of apoplexy at 43. I built a school and outlived him by 30 years. Adelaide's smile was thin and sharp. Revenge takes many forms. Lydia found herself smiling back. That night she wrote a letter to Catherine. Not because she expected a response, Catherine had made her position clear, but because she needed to say it. "I found work. I'm teaching school in Millbrook. I'm surviving without you, without Vivian, without the Duke you tried to foist me on. I'm doing it alone, and I'm managing. You told me I was worthless. You were wrong." She burned the letter after writing it. Catherine didn't deserve to know she'd been thought about at all. The trouble started in week 4. Lydia was teaching the younger children their letters when the schoolhouse door banged open. A man stood in the doorway, well-dressed, riding clothes, expensive boots caked with mud. Behind him, 2 more men. Rougher. The kind hired for muscle, not conversation. "Which one of you is Adelaide Finch?" the first man demanded. Adelaide stood slowly from her desk. "I am." "And you are?" "Marcus Pemberton. I'm the new estate manager for His Grace the Duke of Blackmore." He said it like the title should make everyone bow. "I'm here about the schoolhouse lease. The lease is paid through the year. The lease is being renegotiated. His Grace is reviewing all estate expenditures. This building," he gestured around dismissively, "is costing more than it generates. We're taking it back." The children had gone silent. Even Thomas looked worried. "This is a school," Adelaide said. "It doesn't generate income. That's not the point. The point is efficient use of duchy property. This building could be converted into storage or housing for estate workers. Something productive. Educating children is productive." "That's debatable." Pemberton pulled out a paper. "You have 30 days to vacate. After that, we'll remove you by force if necessary." He dropped the paper on Adelaide's desk and turned to leave. "Wait!" Lydia stood. "The Duke approved this?" Pemberton looked at her like she was something he'd stepped in. "I don't answer to you. I'm asking if Duke Blackmore knows you're closing a school to make storage space. His Grace has authorized me to make decisions in his best interest. This is one of them." "Then he's a coward," Lydia said clearly. The room went dead silent. Pemberton's face reddened. What did you say? I said he's a coward. If he's going to throw children out of school to save money, he should at least have the courage to do it himself instead of sending someone else. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? Lydia walked toward him. She wasn't tall, but fury made her feel it. I know the Duke cares more about appearances than people. I know he makes decisions without considering consequences. And I know he's too much of a coward to face those consequences directly. Miss Hartwell, Adelaide's voice held a warning. Pemberton stepped closer. You're that girl, the one he sent away. Yes. Then you should know better than to speak about your betters. He's not my better. He's just richer. Lydia held her ground. And you're just a man doing his dirty work. How does that feel? One of the muscle men grabbed her arm. Watch your mouth. Adelaide's hand slammed down on her desk with a crack like a gunshot. Get your hands off her, now. The man looked to Pemberton, who nodded. The grip released. 30 days, Pemberton said coldly. And if I hear you've been spreading lies about His Grace, I'll make sure you regret it. They're not lies if they're true. Thomas, that's enough, Adelaide snapped. Thomas was standing now, fists clenched. Several other older boys had risen with him. You can't just take the school, Thomas said. Where are we supposed to go? Not my problem. Pemberton headed for the door. 30 days. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, boss. Then they were gone, and the schoolhouse erupted into chaos. Children crying, others shouting questions. Thomas punched the wall hard enough to bloody his knuckles. Adelaide clapped her hands. Quiet, all of you. The noise died to whispers. Go home, Adelaide said. All of you. School's dismissed for today. But Miss Finch, home, now. They filed out slowly, reluctantly. Emma hugged Lydia's waist before leaving. Thomas paused at the door, looking back like he wanted to say something, then left without speaking. When they were alone, Adelaide sat heavily. Well, she said, that's that then. We can fight this, Lydia said. With what? I've been fighting the duchy for 10 years just to keep this place open. I barely scrape by as it is. Adelaide pulled off her spectacles and rubbed her eyes. I'm tired, Lydia. I don't have another fight in me. Then I'll fight it. You? Adelaide looked up. You have no money, no influence, no standing. What exactly do you think you can do? I don't know yet, but I'm not letting them close this school without trying. Why? These aren't your children. This isn't your fight. It is now. Lydia picked up the eviction notice. If Rowan Blackmore thinks he can just steamroll people because it's convenient, he's wrong. Someone needs to tell him that. And that someone is you, the girl he rejected? Especially me. Lydia folded the paper. Because I have nothing left to lose. Adelaide studied her for a long moment. Then she laughed, short and sharp. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. What's your plan? I'm going back to Ironridge Manor. He'll throw you out. Maybe, but he'll have to look me in the eye while he does it. Lydia grabbed her cloak. Can you manage the school tomorrow? Where are you going now? To talk to people. Find out if anyone else has been getting notices like this. If Pemberton's clearing out buildings, there might be others. She was right. The baker's widow had received notice that her shop lease wouldn't be renewed. The blacksmith was being charged triple for his forge space. A family of tenant farmers had been told they had 3 months to vacate land they'd worked for 2 generations. New management, everyone said, like that explained everything. Duke brought in this Pemberton fellow. Says he's making the estate profitable again. Profitable for who? Lydia asked. No one had a good answer. She spent 2 days gathering information, talked to everyone who'd received notices, found patterns. Pemberton targeted the poorest tenants, the ones least able to fight back, offered buyouts that were insultingly low. When people refused, he used legal pressure, old debts, technicalities in lease agreements, anything to force them out. He's clearing the estate, the blacksmith told her. Heard he's got buyers lined up, rich folk from the city looking for country property. They'll pay top price, and we'll be long gone. Does the Duke know? The blacksmith shrugged. Does he care? That was the question, wasn't it? Lydia returned to the schoolhouse with a list of names and grievances. Adelaide read through it, her expression growing darker. This is worse than I thought, she said finally. We need to confront him, directly. He won't see us. Then we'll make him see us. Lydia was pacing now, energy crackling through her. All of us. Everyone who's been pushed out. We show up at the manor together and demand answers. That's not how things work. How do they work then? We write polite letters he'll ignore? We quietly disappear because that's more convenient for him? Lydia stopped. I'm done being convenient. These people have lives here, families. They deserve to be heard. Adelaide was quiet for a long moment. You're serious about this? Completely. You know this could backfire, make things worse. Or it could make them better. We won't know unless we try. Adelaide stood, walked to the window, stared out at the gray street. I'll help you organize it, she said finally, but on one condition. What? When this fails, and it probably will, you don't give up. You keep teaching, keep fighting. Promise me. Lydia crossed the room and stood beside her. I promise. They shook on it. The meeting was set for the following Sunday. Adelaide spread the word through her network of parents and former students. Lydia talked to the shopkeepers and tenants. Come to the schoolhouse at noon, she told them. We're going to the manor together, strength in numbers. Some agreed immediately. Others were skeptical. What's the point? The baker's widow asked. Duke doesn't care what we think. Maybe not, but he's going to hear it anyway. Sunday came cold and bright. Lydia woke early, her stomach churning with nerves. This was insane. She was nobody, a rejected bride teaching school in a town that barely tolerated her. What made her think she could challenge a duke? But then she thought of Emma's gap-toothed smile, Thomas's bloody knuckles from punching the wall, Adelaide's tired eyes when she said she had no fight left. Lydia got dressed. The schoolhouse filled slowly. 20 people at first, then 30. By noon there were nearly 50, miners and shopkeepers, farmers and laborers, women with babies on their hips, and men with dirt under their nails. Adelaide stood at the front looking stunned. I didn't think this many would come. People are angry, Lydia said. They just needed someone to be angry with them. Thomas appeared at her elbow. You really think this will work? I think we have to try. And if he throws us out, then we tried anyway. He nodded slowly. All right then, let's go make some noise. The walk to Ironridge Manor took an hour. They went on foot, a ragged column of people who'd decided that quiet suffering was worse than loud defiance. Lydia walked at the front with Adelaide. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. The manor appeared through the trees, dark and imposing. For a moment, Lydia's courage wavered. Then she thought of Rowan's cold eyes, the way he dismissed her like she was nothing. She kept walking. They reached the gates. A guard stepped out, looking alarmed at the crowd. State your business. We're here to see the Duke, Lydia said. He's not receiving visitors. He'll receive us. Adelaide's voice cut through. Tell His Grace that his tenants and townsfolk are here to discuss estate management. If he refuses, we'll camp on his lawn until he changes his mind. The guard looked panicked. I'll need to check. You do that, Lydia said. We'll wait. They waited. 10 minutes passed. 20. The crowd grew restless but held, then the gates opened. Not Rowan, but Pemberton, flanked by 4 guards. This is inappropriate, he announced. His Grace does not conduct business with mobs. We're not a mob, the blacksmith called. We're people you're trying to destroy. I'm conducting legitimate estate business. You're stealing from us, someone shouted. The crowd surged forward. The guards tensed. Enough! A new voice, sharp and commanding. Everyone turned. Rowan stood at the top of the manor steps, dressed simply, his expression unreadable. Behind him, an older woman Lydia didn't recognize watched with interest. Clear the gates, Rowan said to the guards. Let them through. Pemberton sputtered. Your Grace, I must advise, I didn't ask for your advice. The gates swung open. The crowd flowed through, stopping at the base of the steps. Rowan's eyes swept over them, stopped on Lydia. Something flickered in his expression, surprise, maybe, or anger. You have 5 minutes, he said. Make it count. Lydia stepped forward. Her voice shook, but she forced it steady. You're destroying this town, she said. Your estate manager is evicting people who've lived here for generations, closing schools, raising rents people can't afford, all in the name of profit. Estate management is complex. It's not complex. It's cruel. She pulled out her list. These are families being pushed out, children who'll have nowhere to learn, people losing everything because you've decided efficiency matters more than lives. I'm trying to save the estate by sacrificing the people who depend on it? Rowan's jaw tightened. You don't understand the financial pressures? Then explain them. Lydia's voice rose. Stand here and tell these people why they have to lose their homes so you can balance your books. Tell Emma why she can't go to school anymore. Tell Thomas why his future doesn't matter. Who are Emma and Thomas? Children whose lives you're ruining without even knowing their names. The crowd murmured agreement. Rowan looked at them, really looked, and for the first time seemed to see them as people instead of problems. I didn't know about the school, he said quietly. That's the problem, Lydia said. You don't know because you don't ask. You just give orders and assume everyone else will deal with the consequences. The estate is failing. Then fix it without destroying people. She was shaking now, fury and fear mixing. You have power, money, options. These people have nothing, and you're taking what little they have because it's easier than finding another way. Rowan descended the steps, stopped 3 feet from her. What would you have me do? He asked. Start by listening. Actually listening. Not to Pemberton, but to the people this affects. Lydia held his gaze. And stop hiding behind managers. If you're going to make decisions that hurt people, at least have the courage to face them yourself. Silence stretched. Then Rowan turned to the crowd. Is what she says true? Are you being forced out? The baker's widow stepped forward. My lease won't be renewed. I've been there 15 years. My rent tripled, the blacksmith added. Can't afford it. We're losing our farm, a woman said, voice breaking. 3 generations gone. More voices joined. Stories of eviction notices, impossible demands, families torn apart. Rowan listened to all of it. His expression gave nothing away. When they finished, he looked at Pemberton. You told me these actions were necessary for estate efficiency. They are, Your Grace. Did you mention they'd leave children without a school? The school is not economically viable. That wasn't my question. Pemberton's face reddened. No, Your Grace, I didn't mention that specifically. What else didn't you mention? I acted in the estate's best interests. You acted in your best interests. The woman behind Rowan spoke for the first time. She had Rowan's eyes and a voice like iron. How much were the city buyers offering you? 10% of the sale? 15? Pemberton went pale. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm accusing you of corruption. You've been selling off estate property and pocketing the difference. She descended the steps, regal and terrifying. I'm Catherine Blackmore, the Dowager Duchess, and you're fired. The crowd erupted. Pemberton backed away. You can't. I have contracts, which I'll have my lawyers review for fraud. Catherine looked at the guards. Escort Mr. Pemberton off the property. If he returns, he'll be arrested. The guards moved. Pemberton tried to argue, but no one was listening. When he was gone, Catherine turned to the crowd. You'll have your leases honored, no rent increases. The school stays open. His Grace and I will review every decision Pemberton made and reverse those based on corruption rather than genuine need. She looked at Rowan. Won't we? It wasn't a question. Rowan met his mother's eyes. Something passed between them. An argument conducted in silence. Finally, he nodded. Yes, you have my word. The crowd cheered. People surged forward to shake Catherine's hand, Rowan's hand, each other's hands. Lydia stood apart, shaking. She'd done it. They'd done it. Adelaide appeared beside her. Well, she said, that went better than expected. Lydia laughed. It came out half-sob. Thomas pushed through the crowd. Miss Hartwell, you were brilliant. We all were. No, you. His eyes shone. You weren't afraid. I was terrified. But you did it anyway. That's what brave means. Before Lydia could respond, a voice cut through the noise. Miss Hartwell. Rowan stood a few feet away. The crowd had parted, giving them space. Your Grace. He looked uncomfortable. I owe you an apology. You owe them an apology. She gestured to the crowd. I was just the one loud enough to say it. Nevertheless, he stepped closer, lowered his voice. I didn't know. About Pemberton. What he was doing. That's still your responsibility. I know. He ran a hand through his hair, the first uncertain gesture she'd seen from him. I've been trying to save the estate. My father left debts, obligations. I thought if I could just make it profitable again. At what cost? I didn't think about the cost. That's the problem. He met her eyes. You were right. About all of it. I've been a coward. Lydia had imagined this moment, Rowan apologizing, admitting he was wrong. She'd imagined feeling triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. What happens now? She asked. Now I fix it. All of it. His jaw set. Starting with the school. You'll have whatever resources you need. Tell that to Adelaide, not me. I'm telling you both. He paused. I'd like to... Could we speak? Privately? Every instinct screamed at Lydia to say no, to walk away while she had the high ground. But something in his expression stopped her. 10 minutes, she said. That's all. They walked away from the crowd toward the gardens. The rain had stopped, leaving everything wet and shining. Rowan didn't speak immediately, just walked, hands clasped behind his back. I've been thinking about what you said, he finally began. That day you left. About basic human decency. Lydia said nothing. You were right. I treated you abominably, made assumptions, dismissed you without consideration. He stopped, turned to face her. I was raised to see people in terms of utility, what they could offer, how they could benefit the estate. It's no excuse, but it's the truth. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know why I was such an ass. Despite everything, Lydia almost smiled. That's one word for it. I have others if you'd like a complete list. This time she did smile, small but real. Rowan's expression softened. The school, the tenants, what you did today, that took courage I don't have. You stood up to Pemberton. After you dragged me here and forced me to listen, that's not courage. That's you doing the hard part and me finally paying attention. So pay attention from now on. I will. He looked back toward the manor, where Catherine was still speaking with the crowd. My mother will help. She's better at this than I am, better at seeing people instead of problems. Why wasn't she doing this before? Because I told her I could handle it myself. Another mistake. He turned back. I'm going to make a lot of changes. It won't happen overnight, but I give you my word. No more Pembertons, no more cruelty disguised as efficiency. Good. They stood in silence for a moment. Can I ask you something? Rowan said. You just did. Why'd you come back? After how I treated you, you had every reason to never speak to me again. Lydia thought about it. Because this wasn't about you. It was about people who needed someone to fight for them, and I happened to be someone who knew you were responsible. Still, most people wouldn't have bothered. Then most people are smarter than me. He laughed, short and surprised. I'm glad you're not smart then. Lydia looked at him, really looked, without the anger and hurt clouding her vision. He looked tired, older than she remembered, the kind of tired that came from carrying weight too heavy to bear alone. Get help, she said, not just from your mother, from the people who actually live on your lands. Ask them what they need. Listen to the answers. I will. And stop hiring people like Pemberton. Definitely noted. She turned to leave. Lydia. She stopped. He'd never used her first name before. Thank you, he said quietly, for not letting me hide. She nodded once, then walked back toward the crowd. Adelaide met her halfway. What did he say? That he'll do better. Do you believe him? Lydia glanced back. Rowan was still standing in the garden, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. I don't know, she said honestly, but I gave him the chance to prove it. That's more than I would have done. That's why you hired me. Lydia linked her arm through Adelaide's. I'm too stubborn to give up on people. Even the ones who don't deserve it. Especially those. They walked back together toward the crowd, toward the schoolhouse, toward a future that looked nothing like what Lydia had planned but was entirely hers anyway. Behind them, Rowan stood alone in the garden and wondered when exactly he'd stopped seeing people as assets and started seeing them as Lydia did, complicated, flawed, and worth fighting for. The answer, he suspected, was the moment a girl with muddy boots had dropped his ring in a puddle and walked away. The answer, he suspected, was the moment a girl with muddy boots had dropped his ring in a puddle and walked away. And now that girl was back in his thoughts at the worst possible time. Rowan stood in his study 3 weeks later, staring at account ledgers that refused to make sense no matter how many times he reviewed them. His father's debts ran deeper than he'd realized. Pemberton had been stealing, yes, but he'd also been hiding the true scope of the estate's collapse. Without the sales Pemberton had arranged, corrupt as they were, Ironridge was bleeding money. "You look like death," Catherine said from the doorway. "Good morning to you too, Mother." She crossed to his desk and picked up one of the ledgers, flipped through it with the practiced eye of someone who'd been managing estates since before Rowan was born. "This is worse than I thought," she said finally. "I know. The repairs alone will cost more than we have, and if we honor all the leases at current rates, we honor them." Rowan's voice was flat. "I gave my word." "Your word doesn't pay creditors." Catherine set the ledger down. "We need income, real income, not Pemberton's schemes. I'm working on it. Work faster." She headed for the door, then paused. "The schoolteacher, Lydia Hartwell." Rowan's pen stopped moving. "What about her?" "She's been asking questions in town about estate management, tenant rights, agricultural yields. Why?" "How should I know?" "Because you've been watching her." Catherine's smile was sharp. "Don't look surprised. I've seen that expression before. Your father had it once, a lifetime ago." "I'm not watching her? Please. You've ridden past that schoolhouse 4 times this week alone." She opened the door. "If you're going to be obvious, at least be productive about it. Talk to her. She has ideas." "About what?" "How to save your estate without destroying your soul in the process. Might be worth listening." Then she was gone, leaving Rowan staring at numbers that still wouldn't cooperate. Catherine was right about one thing. He had been riding past the schoolhouse. He told himself it was about checking on estate properties, ensuring Pemberton's removal hadn't caused disruption. Normal ducal responsibilities. The truth was messier. He kept seeing Lydia's face when she'd confronted him. The fury in her eyes, the way she'd refused to back down even when he'd tried to intimidate her with silence. No one had challenged him like that before. No one had cared enough to try. And now she was in his town, teaching children he'd almost abandoned, asking questions that suggested she saw solutions he'd missed. Rowan pushed back from his desk and grabbed his riding coat. If his mother thought Lydia had ideas, the least he could do was listen. The schoolhouse was in session when he arrived. Through the grimy windows, he could see Lydia at the front, gesturing animatedly while students bent over their slates. He tied his horse and waited outside, feeling ridiculous. Dukes didn't wait outside schools like nervous suitors. They sent summons, expected people to come to them. But Lydia wasn't people who came when summoned. She'd proven that already. The door opened. Children poured out laughing and shoving. Several stopped when they saw him. "That's the Duke," someone whispered. Thomas Hewitt pushed through the crowd. "You here to close the school after all?" "No." "Then what do you want?" "Thomas." Lydia appeared in the doorway. "Inside, now." The boy shot Rowan a suspicious look, but obeyed. When the children were gone, Lydia descended the steps. She looked tired. Ink stained her fingers, and there was chalk dust in her hair. "Your Grace," she said, not quite warm, but not hostile either. "This is unexpected. I wanted to—" Rowan stopped, started again. "My mother said you've been asking questions about the estate." "I ask a lot of questions. Comes with teaching." "She thinks you have ideas about improving things." Lydia crossed her arms. "Is that why you're here? To mine my brain for free labor?" "I'm here because I don't know what I'm doing." The words came out harder than he intended. "The estate is failing. I can't sell property without hurting people. I can't keep it running without income. And I'm out of answers." She studied him for a long moment. "You're serious, like—" "Yes." "You're actually asking for help?" "Yes." "From me, the rejected bride you dismissed as worthless." Rowan flinched. "I never said worthless." "You didn't have to. Your face said it plenty." She turned toward the schoolhouse. "I need to clean up. If you want to talk, you can help." Inside, the schoolhouse was chaos. Slates scattered across benches, chalk dust coating every surface, papers everywhere. Lydia immediately started organizing. Rowan stood uselessly for a moment, then began gathering slates. They worked in silence for several minutes. Your tenants are farmers mostly, Lydia finally said, but they're farming the same crops they've always farmed, using the same methods. Meanwhile, prices drop because everyone's growing the same thing. So diversify. Help them try new crops. Invest in equipment they can't afford individually, form a cooperative where they share resources and split profits. Rowan set down a stack of slates. That would cost money up front, less than you're losing now. She wiped down the chalkboard. And it builds loyalty. Tenants who feel invested in success work harder. They stay instead of leaving for factory jobs in cities. You've thought about this. I've lived with people who are barely surviving. You learn to think creatively. She faced him. But here's the problem. You can't just implement solutions from above. You need buy-in, trust. These people have been burned by Pemberton. They won't believe promises from another rich man who claims to know better. What would you suggest? Prove it. Start small. Pick one farm, one family willing to try something new. Fund it properly. If it works, others will follow. It was a good plan. Better than anything Rowan had considered. There's a tenant, he said slowly. William Marsh. Lost his wife last year, struggling to manage alone. He might be willing. Then talk to him, not as a duke dictating terms, but as someone offering partnership. I don't know how to do that. Learn. Lydia gathered the last of the papers. You're not stupid, Your Grace. You're just used to being obeyed instead of listened to. There's a difference. Rowan found himself almost smiling. You don't pull punches, do you? What would be the point? You'd see through it anyway. Would I? Yes. She met his eyes. You're arrogant and occasionally cruel, but you're not dumb. You know when people are lying to you. You just haven't cared enough to call them on it. The observation hit harder than it should have. I'm trying to care now, he said quietly. Then prove it. Actually do the work instead of just talking about it. She was right. Again. Rowan left the schoolhouse with more questions than answers, but feeling, for the first time in weeks, like maybe he wasn't drowning alone. He visited William Marsh the next day. The farm was small, the fields tired from overuse. Marsh himself looked older than his years, worn down by grief and labor. Your Grace. Marsh pulled off his cap. This is unexpected. I wanted to discuss a proposition. They talked for 2 hours. Rowan laid out Lydia's plan. Crop rotation, new seeds, shared equipment. Marsh listened with the wariness of a man who'd been disappointed before. Why would you invest in me? He finally asked. Because Miss Hartwell thinks it would work, and she's been right about everything else. Marsh's expression shifted slightly. The school teacher? She suggested this? She did. That girl's got spine, stood up to you when no one else would. He looked at his fields. All right, I'll try it. But if it fails, then we learn from it and try something else. They shook on it. Rowan rode back to the manor feeling something unfamiliar. Hope. It lasted exactly 3 days. The letter arrived on a Thursday, delivered by a courier who looked like he'd ridden hard. Rowan broke the seal and felt his stomach drop. Lord Blackmore, your recent actions regarding estate management have not gone unnoticed. Several concerned parties have brought to my attention irregularities in your handling of tenant agreements and property sales. Furthermore, it has come to light that a certain young woman, rejected as unsuitable for marriage, remains in your employ and has undue influence over estate decisions. This raises questions about your judgment. I will be visiting Ironridge within the fortnight to conduct a formal review. I suggest you prepare accordingly. Regards, Lord Ashford. Regional Magistrate Rowan read it twice, then a third time. Ashford. The magistrate was connected to half the noble families in 3 counties, conservative, rigid, and thoroughly convinced that the old ways were the only ways. And someone had complained to him about Lydia. Catherine found him in the study, letter crumpled in his fist. What happened? He handed her the letter, watched her face harden as she read. Ashford, she said. Wonderful. Who would have written to him? Someone who doesn't like changes, or doesn't like you listening to a woman they consider beneath your station. Catherine set the letter down. This is bad, Rowan. I know. If Ashford decides you're mismanaging the estate, he can petition for oversight. force you to appoint a conservator. You'd lose control entirely. I'm aware, and the mention of Lydia, that's not accidental. Someone's trying to discredit both of you. Rowan's jaw tightened. Pemberton. Possibly. Or someone connected to him. Catherine moved to the window. You need to distance yourself from her. Publicly. No. Rowan, I said no. He stood. Lydia hasn't done anything wrong. I'm not throwing her to wolves to save my reputation. This isn't about reputation. It's about keeping control of your estate. By betraying someone who's only tried to help? By proving that everyone who says I'm a coward is right? Catherine turned. Her expression was unreadable. You care about her. I care about doing what's right. That's not what I asked. Rowan looked away. It doesn't matter what I feel. What matters is not letting Ashford destroy everything we've started to build. Then you need a strategy. Ashford responds to propriety, tradition, order. Show him those things. While hiding everything we've actually accomplished? While framing it in language he'll accept. Catherine's mind was already working. The cooperative can be a traditional land improvement initiative. Lydia's suggestions become consulting with local experts. Everything sounds conventional even if the substance isn't. That's lying. That's politics. There's a difference. Rowan hated that she was right. He didn't tell Lydia about the letter immediately, told himself it was because he needed a plan first. The truth was, he didn't want to see her face when she realized her reputation was being used as a weapon against her. But news traveled fast in small towns. She appeared at the manor 2 days later, face flushed with anger. Is it true? She demanded when Jenkins showed her into the study. Is what true? That someone reported me to the magistrate, that I'm being investigated for inappropriate influence. Rowan set down his pen. Where did you hear that? The baker's widow, who heard it from the innkeeper, who heard it from someone at the tavern. Lydia paced. Half the town thinks I've been manipulating you. The other half thinks we're... She stopped. It doesn't matter what they think. Is it true? Ashford received a complaint, yes. About me specifically? About both of us. She laughed, short and bitter. Of course. I should have known. This is what happens when you step out of line. Someone always finds a way to push you back. It's not your fault, isn't it? I'm the one who organized the protest, who confronted you publicly, who kept pushing for changes. She spun to face him. I made you look weak, and now someone's using that against us both. You didn't make me look weak, you made me look human. Same thing to people like Ashford. Rowan stood, crossed to where she stood. My mother thinks I should distance myself from you. Make it clear you have no influence over estate decisions. Lydia's expression shuddered. I see. I'm not going to do that. Why not? It would solve your problem. It would solve Ashford's problem. Mine would still exist. He held her gaze. Everything you've suggested has been right. The cooperative, the tenant partnerships, listening instead of dictating, it's working. I'm not going to pretend otherwise just because some magistrate thinks women shouldn't have opinions. You might have to. Then I'll lose control of the estate honestly instead of keeping it through cowardice. Lydia stared at him. You've changed. You changed me. The words hung between them. Rowan hadn't meant to say them aloud. That's not... Lydia started. Stopped. You can't risk everything for principles. Why not? You did. I had nothing to lose. And I have everything to lose. That's the point. He stepped closer. If I compromise now, what happens next time? And the time after that? Eventually, I'll be right back where I started, making decisions based on fear instead of what's right. This is different. How? Because you're a duke. You have responsibilities, people depending on you. All the more reason to stand firm. Rowan's voice was steady. When Ashford comes, I'll show him everything we've done. I'll explain the reasoning. If he disagrees, that's his choice. But I won't lie about your role in it. Lydia's eyes were bright. You're going to lose. Maybe. But you taught me that losing with integrity beats winning through betrayal. I never said that. You didn't have to. You showed me. He managed a small smile. When you dropped that ring and walked away, that was the bravest thing I'd ever seen. I'm just trying to catch up. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. We're both idiots, she said. Probably. Ashford's going to destroy us. Most likely. And you're really not going to back down? No. Lydia shook her head. Then I guess we'd better make sure we have evidence he can't ignore. They spent the next week preparing. Rowan documented everything: tenant agreements, improvement plans, yield projections. Lydia gathered testimonials from people who'd benefited from the changes. William Marsh's fields were already showing improvement. The cooperative had 7 families involved now, sharing equipment and expertise. It's working, Marsh told Rowan during an inspection. Better than I expected. Tell that to Lord Ashford when he arrives. The magistrate? Why's he coming? To determine if I'm mismanaging the estate. Marsh's face darkened. Because of the changes? Among other things. That's horseshit. Pardon my language, Your Grace, but these are the best decisions you've made. Anyone saying different is blind or lying. Unfortunately, Lord Ashford isn't required to be either sensible or honest. Then we'll make him listen, all of us. Marsh straightened. You stood up for us when Pemberton was stealing. We'll stand up for you. Rowan felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. I appreciate that. Don't appreciate it. Just don't back down. The same words Lydia had used. Catherine was less optimistic. Ashford arrives tomorrow, she said over dinner. Are you prepared? As much as I can be. He'll ask about Lydia. I'll tell him the truth. That she's an advisor, a consultant, that she's someone who saw problems I was blind to and had the courage to speak up. Catherine's fork paused halfway to her mouth. You're going to tell a conservative magistrate that you take advice from a rejected bride working as a village school teacher. Yes. Rowan, I'm not lying, Mother, not about this. She set down her fork, studied him. You're in love with her. It wasn't a question. Rowan didn't answer immediately. Couldn't. Was he? He thought about Lydia's fury in the rain, her careful patience with students, the way she'd looked at him when he promised not to betray her, like she wanted to believe him, but had been disappointed too many times before. It doesn't matter what I feel, he said finally. It's the only thing that matters. How? Even if that were true, she'd never trust me. Not after how I treated her. Then prove you've changed. Not through words. Through action. I'm trying. Try harder. Catherine stood. Because if Ashford removes you from control tomorrow, you won't get another chance. Rowan barely slept that night. Kept running through arguments, anticipating objections. Ashford was smart and ruthless. He'd find weaknesses in every plan. Morning came too quickly. The magistrate arrived in a carriage that probably cost more than most tenant farms. He was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of bearing that suggested he'd never been wrong about anything in his life. Lord Blackmore. His handshake was perfunctory. Shall we begin? They spent 4 hours reviewing documents. Ashford asked pointed questions about every decision Rowan had made since Pemberton's dismissal. These tenant agreements, you're charging below market rate. I'm charging what they can afford while still improving the land. That's not sustainable. It's more sustainable than having empty farms and no income at all. Ashford made a note. And this cooperative, you're funding equipment purchases? As an investment, shared resources mean better yields, which benefit everyone. Or they mean you're wasting money on tenants who should provide their own tools. They would if they could. Most of them are barely surviving. That's not your problem. It is if I want a functional estate. More notes. Ashford's expression gave nothing away. Finally, I want to speak with some of these tenants, independently. Of course. And the school teacher, Miss Hartwell. Rowan's stomach tightened. She's teaching right now. Then we'll visit the school. There was no way to refuse without looking guilty. They walked to the schoolhouse in tense silence. Ashford examined everything, the buildings, the roads, even the people they passed, with a critical eye. The schoolhouse was noisy when they arrived, children reciting multiplication tables, not quite in unison. Lydia stood at the front, correcting a student's slate. She looked up when the door opened. Her eyes met Rowan's. He tried to communicate something, warning, apology. He wasn't sure, but Ashford was already moving forward. Miss Hartwell, I presume. Yes. Lydia set down the slate. Children, continue practicing. Quietly. Adelaide appeared from the back room. Lord Ashford, I wasn't aware we were expecting visitors. This is an informal inspection. I wanted to see the school Lord Blackmore has been so determined to keep open. It's a school, Adelaide said flatly. Children learn. Not much to inspect. Nevertheless, Ashford walked between the benches, examining everything. Tell me, Miss Hartwell, how did you come to work here? Mrs. Finch hired me. And before that? I was between positions. Between positions? Ashford turned. Is that what we're calling it? I understand you were briefly betrothed to His Grace. The room went silent. Even the children stopped whispering. There was a misunderstanding about the arrangement, Lydia said carefully. It was dissolved. How convenient, and yet here you are, working on his estate, advising him on management decisions. I've offered suggestions when asked. Have you? Ashford stepped closer. What qualifications do you have for estate management, Miss Hartwell? None formal. What about informal? Common sense, and the ability to listen to people who actually work the land instead of assuming I know better. Adelaide made a small sound that might have been a laugh. Ashford's eyes narrowed. You're aware that your relationship with His Grace has raised concerns. What relationship? Lydia's voice was steady, but Rowan could see her hands shaking. I teach school. Sometimes the Duke asks my opinion. I give it, that's all. Is it? Yes. Because there are rumors. There are always rumors. Lydia cut him off. I'm a woman working in a position men think I shouldn't have. Of course people talk. It doesn't make them right. It makes them concerned about propriety. Propriety? Lydia's laugh was sharp. Forgive me, Lord Ashford, but I find it interesting that propriety only matters when women step out of line. The Duke's previous estate manager was stealing from tenants. Where was propriety then? That's not, or when those tenants were being evicted so land could be sold to city buyers. Where was propriety when children were about to lose their school? Miss Hartwell, no. She stepped forward. Rowan wanted to stop her, knew this was making things worse, but couldn't move. You want to talk about my relationship with the Duke? Fine. Here it is. I'm someone who told him the truth when everyone else was lying. I'm someone who saw people suffering and refused to stay quiet. And yes, I'm someone he rejected because I wasn't good enough. Does that satisfy your concerns about propriety? The silence was absolute. Ashford's face had gone red. You're out of line. I'm honest. There's a difference. Mrs. Finch, perhaps you should speak with your employee about appropriate conduct. Miss Hartwell's conduct is impeccable, Adelaide said coldly. She's the best teacher I've had in 20 years. If that makes her inappropriate, I'll take inappropriate over useless any day. Ashford turned to Rowan. This is exactly the kind of influence I was warned about. Miss Hartwell spoke truthfully, Rowan said. If that's problematic, the problem isn't with her. You're defending this? I'm defending honesty, something in short supply lately. Ashford's jaw worked. I've seen enough. We'll continue this discussion at the manor. He stalked out. Rowan hesitated, looking at Lydia. Go, she said quietly. I've already made things worse. You told the truth, which is exactly what he didn't want to hear. She turned away. Just go, Your Grace. Rowan wanted to argue, wanted to stay and fix this somehow. But Adelaide was already ushering him toward the door, and the children were staring, and Lydia wouldn't look at him. He left. Back at the manor, Ashford laid out his verdict with surgical precision. Your estate management is unconventional to the point of recklessness. Your reliance on advice from inappropriate sources shows poor judgment, and your inability to maintain proper social boundaries has created scandal. The estate is improving, in the short term perhaps. Long term, these decisions will fail. Ashford pulled out documents. I'm recommending conservatorship. Someone with experience will oversee operations while you learn proper management. Who? Lord Pemberton has connections in estate management. I'm sure he can recommend someone suitable. Rowan's blood went cold. Pemberton is corrupt. Pemberton made difficult but necessary decisions. Decisions you've undone out of misplaced sentiment. Ashford stood. My report will be filed within the week. I suggest you use that time to reconsider your associations. If you mean Miss Hartwell, I mean anyone who encourages you to prioritize feelings over responsibility. After he left, Catherine found Rowan in the study, staring at nothing. It's over, he said. Not yet. He's going to give control to someone Pemberton chooses. Everything we've done will stand if we fight for it. Catherine poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed him one. Ashford's report takes a week to file. That's time. For what? To prove him wrong so conclusively he can't ignore it. She drank. But you'll need help. Real help. From people who have everything to lose if he succeeds. The tenants. And Lydia. Rowan shook his head. She's already sacrificed enough. I won't ask her to risk more. Then she'll volunteer anyway, because that's who she is. Catherine met his eyes. The question is whether you're brave enough to let her. The answer terrified him, because letting Lydia fight meant admitting he couldn't protect her, couldn't shield her from the consequences of standing with him. It meant trusting her to be strong enough to face whatever came, and trusting himself to deserve that faith. Rowan drank the whiskey. It burned going down. All right, he said, let's fight. He went to the schoolhouse the next morning. Lydia was already there, preparing lessons. She looked up when he entered. If you're here to fire me, I'm here to ask for your help. Again. He closed the door. Ashford's recommending conservatorship. Someone connected to Pemberton will take control of the estate. Everything we've built disappears. I know. Adelaide told me. I want to fight it, but I need evidence he can't dismiss. Proof that these changes work. You have a week. I know. Lydia set down her chalk. What are you asking? Help me organize the tenants, document everything, show Ashford that this isn't sentiment, it's practical, sustainable, and working. He won't listen. Maybe not, but we have to try. She looked at him for a long moment. This will destroy what's left of my reputation. I know. People already think I'm manipulating you. This will confirm it. I know. And if we lose, I'll be unemployable anywhere in 3 counties. I know. Rowan stepped closer. I'm asking you to risk everything. I have no right, but I'm asking anyway because I can't do this without you. Why not? Because you see solutions I don't. Because people trust you in ways they'll never trust me. Because... He stopped, started again. Because you're the bravest person I've ever met, and I need that courage right now. Lydia's expression was unreadable. If I do this, if I help you, you have to promise me something. Anything. Don't protect me. Don't try to shield me from consequences or take blame that's mine. If we're doing this, we're doing it as equals. Understood? Rowan felt something shift in his chest. Understood. Then let's get to work. They had 6 days. Lydia organized the tenants into groups. Each one documented their improvements, compiled yield data, calculated cost savings. William Marsh became their spokesperson, blunt, honest, impossible to dismiss as sentimental. Adelaide mobilized the school parents. They wrote testimonials about education's value, employment created, children's futures changed. Catherine worked the social angle, invited influential neighbors to tour the cooperative, see the improvements firsthand, planted seeds of doubt about Ashford's motives. Rowan coordinated everything, worked 20-hour days, barely slept. On the 5th day, Lydia found him in the study at 2 a.m, surrounded by papers. You look terrible, she said. Thank you. I'm serious. When did you last sleep? I'll sleep when this is over. You'll collapse before then. She moved papers aside and sat on his desk. Rowan, look at me. He did. She looked exhausted too, ink-stained and hollow-eyed. We've done everything we can, she said gently. The evidence is solid. The testimonials are powerful. Whether it's enough, that's not in our control anymore. I can't lose this. I know. If Ashford takes over, then we'll fight that too. But right now, you need to rest. I can't. You can. She slid off the desk, held out her hand. Come on. Where? Anywhere but here. Even dukes need sleep. He let her pull him up, let her lead him out of the study and up the stairs. At his door, she stopped. Get some sleep. That's an order. You're ordering a duke? Someone has to. You're clearly terrible at self-preservation. Despite everything, Rowan almost smiled. Thank you for all of this. Don't thank me yet. We might still lose. Even if we do, thank you. Lydia looked at him. Something in her expression softened. You really have changed. Because of you. No, because you chose to. She squeezed his hand once. That's what matters. Sleep well, Your Grace. Then she was gone, and Rowan was alone with the realization that he wasn't just fighting for the estate anymore. He was fighting for the chance to deserve her. The 6th day arrived with rain. Of course it was rain. Ashford's carriage appeared at noon, accompanied by 2 others. He'd brought witnesses, officials, people to make this formal and irreversible. The manor's great hall had been arranged for presentations. Tenants filled one side. Local gentry filled the other. Adelaide and her school parents stood in the back. Lydia stood beside Rowan at the front. She wore her best dress, still plain, still worn at the hem, and held her spine straight. Ready? She murmured. No. You? Not even slightly. Ashford entered with his entourage, looked around the crowded hall with disapproval. This is highly irregular. You wanted to review my management, Rowan said. Here it is, every person affected, every decision documented. You wanted transparency. I'm providing it. Ashford's jaw tightened, but he couldn't refuse, not with this many witnesses. Very well. Present your evidence. Rowan nodded to William Marsh. The farmer stepped forward, rough hands holding carefully prepared papers. My name's William Marsh, he said. I've worked duchy land for 30 years. This past year's been the hardest since my wife died. But these last months, since His Grace started listening instead of dictating, things changed. He laid out the numbers. Crop yields up 20%, costs down through shared equipment, soil improvements that would pay dividends for years. This isn't charity, Marsh said firmly. It's smart business, and it works because His Grace was willing to trust people who actually know the land. Others followed, tenant after tenant with similar stories. Better yields, lower costs, hope where there'd been despair. Then Adelaide, sharp and uncompromising. The school was hours from closing. Children were being pulled out to work because families needed the income. Now attendance is up. Students are learning trades. Some will go to university. She fixed Ashford with a stare. That's His Grace's mismanagement, creating futures instead of destroying them. The school parents added their voices. Stories of children who could read now. Do mathematics, write letters. My son wants to be an engineer, one mother said, voice thick with emotion. A year ago that was impossible. Now it's not. Because of this school. Because His Grace fought to keep it open. When they finished, Ashford sat in silence. Then he stood. This is all very touching, but sentiment doesn't change economic reality. These improvements cost money the estate doesn't have. Actually, Catherine stepped forward with her own documents. The estate is showing profit for the first time in 5 years. Small, but growing. These investments are paying off. Impossible. Check the numbers yourself. My son made mistakes, yes, but he also made brave decisions, and they're working. Ashford reviewed the financials. His expression darkened. Even if this is accurate, and I have doubts, it doesn't address the impropriety of Miss Hartwell's involvement. What impropriety? Thomas Hewitt's voice rang out. The boy pushed forward. She's a teacher. She helps people. If that's improper, your standards are stupid. Young man, he's right. Lydia stepped forward. Every eye turned to her. Lord Ashford, you've made your opinion of me clear. I'm inappropriate, unsuitable, a scandal waiting to happen. Fine. But answer me this. What would have happened if I'd stayed quiet? That's not relevant. It's entirely relevant. The school would have closed. Tenants would have been evicted. Children would have lost their futures. All because the proper thing was to let Pemberton keep stealing. Her voice rose. You want to talk about impropriety? The impropriety is caring more about appearances than people's lives. The hall erupted, people shouting agreement, Ashford trying to call for order. And then the door burst open. A man stood there, expensive clothes, cold eyes. Pemberton. Lord Ashford, he said smoothly. I apologize for the interruption, but there's something you should know about Miss Hartwell before you make any decisions. Lydia went white. Rowan stepped in front of her. Get out. In a moment. First, Lord Ashford should know that Miss Hartwell's family sent me a very interesting letter about her background, her father's debts, the gambling, the drinking. Pemberton smiled. And the fact that she was never legitimately engaged to his grace at all. Her stepmother forged the betrothal papers. The room went silent. Ashford turned slowly to face Lydia. Is this true? Lydia's hands were shaking. I didn't know. The papers were already signed when... You didn't know your stepmother forged documents to marry you off? I knew she was desperate. I didn't know she'd... Lydia stopped, took a breath. Yes. The papers were probably forged. I didn't know that when I came here. So everything, your presence here, your advice, your involvement, it's all based on fraud. No. She didn't know. Rowan's voice cracked like thunder. And even if she had, it wouldn't change the fact that everything she's suggested has been right. It changes everything. Ashford stood. This woman obtained access to your estate through deception, inserted herself into your confidence through manipulation, and you've allowed it more. You've defended it. Because she's done nothing wrong. She's done everything wrong, and so have you by listening to her. Pemberton was smiling. I have the original documents and testimony from her stepmother. Miss Hartwell came here under false pretenses, probably planned the whole thing with her family to extract money. That's a lie, Adelaide shouted. Is it? Then why did her stepmother accept payment from his grace? Why did Miss Hartwell conveniently stay on estate grounds? The implications hung in the air, ugly, convincing. Rowan looked at Lydia. Her face had gone pale. She was shaking, and he knew, with absolute certainty. This was the moment that would define everything. He could protect his estate, distance himself from her, claim he'd been deceived. Ashford would accept that. Pemberton's plan would fail. All he had to do was abandon Lydia one more time. Or, Rowan stepped forward, placed himself between Lydia and the entire room. You're right, he said clearly. I've made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people, made decisions based on incomplete information. But here's what I know for certain. Lydia Hartwell is not one of those mistakes. Your Grace, Ashford's tone held warning. She came here believing she was entering a legitimate arrangement. When I rejected her, she didn't beg, didn't manipulate. She left, built a life on her own. The only reason she's involved now is because I asked for her help. After she orchestrated a mob, after she organized people I'd been failing to protect. She didn't manipulate me. She showed me I was wrong. There's a difference. You're defending fraud. I'm defending the truth. Yes, the papers were probably forged. Yes, her stepmother lied, but Lydia didn't. She's been honest about everything, more honest than anyone else in this room. Pemberton's smile widened. How noble. But Lord Ashford, surely you see the problem. His grace is clearly compromised, emotionally involved beyond reason. You're right, Rowan said. I am emotionally involved. The room went silent. Rowan turned, looked at Lydia directly. I am compromised. Because somewhere between that first day when I was cruel to her and today when she risked everything to help me, I fell in love with her. Lydia's eyes went wide. I fell in love with her courage, her honesty, her refusal to accept that things couldn't change. And yes, that compromises my judgment, but it also clarified it. He faced Ashford. Everything Lydia suggested made the estate better, made me better. If that's fraud, then I'll take fraud over the legitimate corruption that was destroying us before she arrived. Ashford stood slowly. Lord Blackmore, are you saying you intend to marry this woman? Rowan's heart hammered. This was it, the point of no return. If she'll have me. Yes. Then you leave me no choice. Ashford pulled out documents. I'm recommending immediate conservatorship. You're clearly unfit to manage. Wait! Catherine stepped forward. Lord Ashford, before you file that recommendation, there's something you should know. About Pemberton. What about him? That he's been working with Lord Ashford's nephew to buy estate property at below-market prices. She produced her own documents. I have contracts, correspondence, proof that this entire investigation was orchestrated not to protect the estate, but to acquire it. Pemberton's face went white. Ashford snatched the papers, read them. His expression turned thunderous. You used my authority to... I did nothing wrong. You committed fraud! Bribery! Used my name to... Ashford crumpled the papers. "Get out, before I have you arrested." Pemberton fled. The hall erupted again. Questions, accusations, chaos. Through it all, Rowan was aware of only one thing: Lydia standing beside him, staring at him like she'd never seen him before. "Did you mean it?" she asked quietly. "Or were you just trying to save the estate?" "I meant it. Rowan, I love you. I'm terrified, and I have no idea if you could ever feel the same after how I treated you, but I love you, and I needed you to know that even if—" She kissed him, right there, in front of everyone, in the middle of chaos and scandal and everything falling apart. She kissed him like it was the only sane thing to do in an insane world. When they broke apart, the hall had gone silent again. Ashford cleared his throat. "Well, this is irregular. Everything about us is irregular," Lydia said, not looking away from Rowan. "Might as well embrace it." "Indeed." Ashford gathered his papers. "I'll need time to review the evidence, all of it, including Lady Catherine's documents, but I will say this." He looked at Rowan. "You've shown questionable judgment in many areas, but in trusting Miss Hartwell, you may have finally gotten something right." He left. His entourage followed. The tenants cheered. Adelaide laughed. Catherine smiled like she'd planned this all along. And Lydia looked at Rowan with something that might have been hope. "We survived," she said. "Barely. Still counts. Lydia, I meant what I said. I know, but we need to talk, somewhere private, somewhere that isn't full of people who just watched me kiss a duke." Thomas called out, "That was brilliant, Miss Hartwell." Lydia's face went red. Rowan grabbed her hand. "Come on." They escaped through a side door, ended up in the garden where they'd talked weeks ago. Rain was still falling. Of course it was. "So," Lydia said, "you love me." "Yes." "And you announced it in front of half the county." "Yes." "That was possibly the stupidest, most romantic thing I've ever seen." Rowan almost laughed. "I panicked. I noticed." She touched his face. "I love you too. I've been trying not to. You're arrogant and occasionally infuriating, and you rejected me in the worst possible way." "I know. But you changed. You listened. You fought for people when it would have been easier to abandon them. And you chose me over your estate. I chose what was right." "Same thing." She smiled. "So yes, I love you. And yes, I'll marry you. But on one condition." "What?" "No more secrets. No more protecting me from consequences. We're partners or we're nothing." "Partners," Rowan agreed. "Equals." "Good." She kissed him again, slower this time. "Now let's go face whatever fresh disaster is waiting inside." They walked back hand in hand. At the door, Lydia paused. "Rowan, thank you." "For what?" "For proving that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway." "I learned that from you." "Then we're both idiots." "Perfect match, then." They opened the door together and walked back into the chaos, ready for whatever came next. But in Catherine's study, where Ashford reviewed documents in private, he found something that made his blood run cold. A letter. Hidden in Pemberton's correspondence. Addressed to someone in London, someone with connections to the crown, an interest in acquiring duchy lands. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. And the danger was far worse than any of them knew. Catherine found the letter at midnight, 3 days after Ashford's departure. She'd been sorting through the documents Pemberton left behind. There were boxes of them, years of correspondence that told the story of systematic theft dressed up as efficiency. But this letter was different. The seal was unusual. Not the standard wax used for business correspondence, but something heavier, official. The paper itself was expensive, the kind reserved for important communications. She broke the seal carefully and read. Then read again. Then poured herself a very large whiskey and went to wake her son. Rowan was in the study, naturally. He'd been sleeping there more nights than not since the confrontation, surrounded by estate papers and improvement plans. Lydia had tried to drag him to bed at reasonable hours, but he was driven by something that looked suspiciously like terror disguised as productivity. "Mother?" He looked up when Catherine entered. "It's after midnight. Read this." She handed him the letter. "Then tell me I'm overreacting." Rowan scanned the first paragraph, went pale, read the rest in silence. "This can't be real," he said finally. It's real. I verified the seal. That's Lord Chancellor Whitmore's personal mark. The Lord Chancellor is trying to acquire duchy lands? Not trying, planning, has been for the past 18 months. Catherine refilled her glass. Pemberton wasn't working alone. He was the inside man for something much bigger. Rowan read the letter a third time, as if the words might change. They didn't. The letter laid out a plan in careful detail. Destabilize the Blackmore estate through strategic mismanagement, force the Duke into financial crisis, trigger a conservatorship review, acquire the lands through intermediaries at bankruptcy prices. The Crown would then discover valuable mineral deposits on the property, deposits Pemberton's geological surveys had already confirmed, and compensate the new owners handsomely for mining rights. Everyone would profit, except the Blackmores and the people who actually lived there. Whitmore has the king's ear, Catherine said quietly. If he wants this estate, he'll find a way to take it. We exposed Pemberton, yes. But Pemberton was just one piece. There are others. How many others? The letter mentions 3 more contacts, people embedded in estate operations. We don't know who they are. Rowan set the letter down carefully, as if it might explode. What do we do? That depends. Do you want to survive, or do you want to win? What's the difference? Surviving means we negotiate, give them something to make this go away, lose part of the estate to save the rest. Catherine watched him. Winning means we fight, expose the whole conspiracy, risk losing everything but possibly keep it all. Fighting worked last time. Last time we faced Ashford, a magistrate bound by rules, however much he bent them. This time we're facing someone who operates above rules, someone who can destroy us and make it look legal. Rowan stood, paced to the window. The estate stretched out in darkness beyond, tenant farms and fields that depended on decisions he made in rooms like this. What would Father have done? Your father would have negotiated, taken the loss and protected what remained. And you? Catherine smiled, sharp and dangerous. I'd burn it all down before I let them take it. That's not an option. Then find a third way. You're good at those now. She moved toward the door. Talk to Lydia. She sees angles we don't. After Catherine left, Rowan stared at the letter until the words blurred. 3 embedded contacts. People he trusted. People who'd been sabotaging him from the inside while he thought he was making progress. The improvements, the cooperative, the tenant agreements, how much of that was real, and how much was being undermined even as he celebrated small victories? He thought about going to wake Lydia, decided against it. She'd been teaching all day, then helping Adelaide prepare for a school inspection. She needed sleep more than she needed his panic, but sleep wouldn't come for him. So he did what he always did when the walls closed in. He worked. By dawn, he had a plan. It was probably stupid, possibly suicidal, but it was something. Lydia found him at 6, still surrounded by papers. You didn't sleep again, she said. Not a question. Couldn't. There's been a development. He handed her the letter. Read this. She did. Her expression cycled through confusion, shock, and finally cold fury. They were planning this the whole time, she said. While children were losing their school, while families were being evicted, this was all just, what, real estate speculation? With the king's blessing, apparently. And Pemberton? Was just the visible piece. There are 3 more people working against us. We don't know who. Lydia set the letter down very carefully. So what do we do? I've been thinking about that. Rowan pulled out the notes he'd made during the night. We can't fight them directly. They're too powerful, but we can make the estate worthless to them. How? By giving it away. She blinked. Explain. The value is in the mineral deposits, but mineral rights can be separated from land ownership. If we transfer those rights to the tenants, make them stakeholders, then Whitmore can't acquire them easily. He'd have to negotiate with dozens of individual owners instead of just me. Would that even work legally? I don't know. That's why I need your help figuring it out. Lydia studied his notes. This is insane. I know. You'd be making yourself poor to spite them. I'd be keeping my word to the people who trusted me. There's a difference. She looked up at him. Something in her expression shifted. You really have changed. You keep saying that like it surprises you. It does. People don't usually change this much this fast. Maybe I had good motivation. He caught her hand. Will you help me? Of course. She squeezed his fingers. But Rowan, if we do this, there's no going back. You'll be declaring war on one of the most powerful men in the country. I declared war when I refused to let them close the school. This is just the next battle. Then we'd better not lose. They spent the next week in frantic preparation. Catherine brought in lawyers, discreet ones, whose loyalty was to the Blackmore family rather than their own advancement. They reviewed the plan from every angle, looking for weaknesses. It could work, the lead attorney said finally, but it's never been done on this scale. You'd be creating a precedent, and powerful people hate precedents that limit their power. Can they stop us? Rowan asked. Not legally, but there are other ways to stop things. We'll risk it. Your Grace, I must advise, your objection is noted. Draw up the papers. The harder part was convincing the tenants. Rowan called a meeting at the schoolhouse, neutral ground where people felt comfortable speaking freely. 50 people showed up, some curious, some suspicious, all exhausted from years of uncertainty. Thank you for coming, Rowan began. I have a proposal. It's unconventional and possibly insane, but I want your input before proceeding. He laid out the situation. Not all of it. Mentioning the Lord Chancellor by name would cause panic, but enough. Powerful interests wanted the land. The estate was under threat. Traditional defenses wouldn't work. So instead of trying to hold everything myself, he said, I'm proposing we share it, formally. I'll transfer mineral rights to you, the people who actually work this land. You'll own your stakes outright. If someone wants to mine here, they negotiate with you, not me. Silence. Then William Marsh stood. Why would you do that? Because it's right, and because it makes the estate harder to steal. But you'd lose value, power. I'd lose the illusion of control. I never really had it anyway. You're the ones who make this place function. This is a trick, someone called from the back. Rich folk don't give away power. I'm not giving it away. I'm acknowledging where it actually belongs. Thomas Hewitt's father stood, a coal miner who'd worked duchy land his whole life. What's the catch? No catch. But there's risk. The people who want this land won't stop just because ownership is complicated. They'll find other pressure points, other ways to hurt us. Like what? I don't know. That's why I'm asking if you're willing to take this chance with me. The room erupted in argument. Some people thought it was brilliant. Others thought it was suicide. A few thought it was both. Adelaide cut through the noise. Let me ask a different question. What happens if we don't do this? Rowan met her eyes. Eventually, someone with more money and better lawyers takes everything. You lose your homes. I lose the estate. They win. And if we do this, we might still lose, but we lose together, fighting for something we believe in. And there's a chance, small but real, that we win. More arguing, more questions. Lydia stood beside Rowan, silent but present. A reminder that this wasn't just ducal strategy. It was about actual people and actual futures. Finally, Marsh spoke again. I want to see the paperwork, have lawyers explain it. But if it's as you say, if we'd really own our stakes, then I'm in. Others agreed. Not everyone, but enough. Over the next 2 weeks, they held smaller meetings, explained the details, answered questions until voices went hoarse. The lawyers drew up individual contracts for each tenant family. Tedious, exhausting work. Lydia coordinated everything, scheduled meetings, tracked who'd signed, followed up with holdouts. She was better at the organizational chaos than Rowan, who tended to get lost in abstract strategy while practical details slipped through. You're enjoying this, he said one night, watching her update her lists. I'm good at this. There's a difference. You could manage the entire estate. I'm a school teacher. You're wasted as a school teacher. She looked up sharply. I love teaching. I know. I just meant you have skills beyond that, skills that could make me useful to you. Her tone had an edge. Turn me into an asset? Rowan stopped, realized what he'd said. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? Because it sounded like you were suggesting I give up the work I love to become your estate manager. I was suggesting you could do both, if you wanted, if... He ran a hand through his hair. I'm saying this badly. Yes, you are. What I meant is that you're brilliant at organizing people and solving problems. And if you wanted to use those skills in estate management, I'd be grateful. But only if you wanted to, not because I'm asking. Lydia studied him. You really mean that? Yes. Even though you need help. Even though. I'll find another way if you'd rather keep teaching. She set down her pen. I like having the option. That's new. What is? Being asked instead of told, given choices instead of ultimatums. She smiled slightly. You're learning. I have a good teacher. Terrible flirt, though. I'm working on it. The contracts were finalized 3 weeks after the initial meeting. 43 families signed, a few held back, uncertain or afraid. Rowan didn't push them. Forced participation defeated the entire purpose. On signing day, they gathered at the manor. Catherine had arranged refreshments, nothing fancy, but enough to make it feel ceremonial. Each family came forward, signed their contract, received their deed. Some people cried, others laughed. A few looked stunned, like they couldn't quite believe it was real. When the last signature was recorded, Marsh raised his cup. To His Grace, who turned out to be less of an ass than expected. Rowan nearly choked on his drink. Catherine laughed so hard she had to sit down. I'll take that as a compliment, Rowan managed. It was one, barely. The celebration lasted into evening. Lydia found Rowan later, standing apart from the crowd, watching. You did it, she said. We did it. Fair enough. She leaned against him. What happens now? Now we wait and see if anyone notices. Someone noticed. The letter arrived 4 days later. No seal this time, no signature, just words on paper, delivered by a courier who disappeared before anyone could question him. Lord Blackmore, your recent actions regarding mineral rights transfer have been noted. While creative, they will not prevent the inevitable. You have made enemies who do not forgive. Reconsider your position while you still can. Rowan showed it to Catherine and Lydia together. Well, Catherine said, that's direct. It's a threat, Lydia said. They're trying to scare us into reversing the transfers. Can they force us to? Rowan asked his mother. Not legally, but they can make life difficult in other ways. What ways? Banking pressure, trade restrictions, social isolation. There are 1,000 ways to destroy someone without touching them directly. Let them try. Rowan, I'm serious. We did the right thing. I'm not undoing it because someone sent an anonymous threat. Lydia touched his arm. What if they target the tenants, the people who signed? That stopped him. He hadn't considered it. Had been so focused on protecting the estate that he'd forgotten protection could be weaponized against the people he was trying to help. Then we protect them, he said, but he had no idea how. The answer came from an unexpected source. Ashford returned a week later. Not with officials this time, just himself, looking tired and older than Rowan remembered. Lord Blackmore, he said when Jenkins showed him in. I need to speak with you, privately. They went to the study. Ashford refused refreshments, which suggested this wasn't a social call. I've been reviewing the evidence Lady Catherine provided, he began, regarding Pemberton's connections. It led me to some disturbing discoveries. About the Lord Chancellor? Ashford's eyes narrowed. You know. We found a letter detailing the plan to acquire the estate. Then you know how deep this goes. Ashford sat heavily. I've spent 3 weeks investigating, quietly. What I found... He stopped, started again. Pemberton was working for a consortium, wealthy men who buy distressed estates, strip them of resources and sell the shells. They've done it 17 times in the past decade. And Whitmore? Provides political cover, ensures legal challenges fail, in exchange for a percentage. Ashford looked old and angry. I've been a magistrate for 30 years. I thought I was serving justice. Instead, I've been enabling theft. Rowan didn't know what to say to that. Your mineral rights transfer was brilliant, Ashford continued. It breaks their model. They can't acquire dozens of individual stakes without exposing themselves. But they'll find another way. Yes, they're already moving. I've seen banking communications. They're going to call in loans, pressure creditors, force your tenants into selling their stakes. Can they do that? If the tenants are in debt, and most are, yes. Rowan felt cold. So we save them from eviction just to put them in different danger. Not if you move first. Ashford pulled out papers. I've been drafting a proposal. A cooperative bank, owned by the tenants, funded by the estate. Low-interest loans to consolidate existing debts. Removes the leverage these people are trying to use. You're helping us. I'm helping justice, which I should have been doing all along. Ashford's voice was bitter. I let myself be used, Lord Blackmore. Let Pemberton manipulate me because it was easier than questioning my assumptions. I owe these people better. Why bring this to me? Because you'll need capital to fund the bank, and you'll need someone with legal standing to organize it. I can provide both. You'd invest in this? I'd run it, if you'll have me. Ashford met his eyes. I'm retiring from the magistracy. My reputation is compromised, but I can still do something useful with the years I have left. Rowan looked at the man who'd almost destroyed everything, saw genuine remorse, genuine determination to make amends. We'll need to talk to the tenants, he said. They should decide if they trust you. Fair enough. The meeting was tense. Marsh confronted Ashford directly. You tried to take away our homes. Why should we believe you've changed? Because I was wrong, and I'm trying to fix it. Ashford laid out his proposal, detailed the threats facing them, explained how a cooperative bank could help. I can't undo what I did, but I can try to make the future better than the past. Pretty words, someone called. What's it cost us? Trust, which I haven't earned, but I'm asking for the chance to earn it. They argued for hours. Some people wanted to reject him outright. Others were willing to listen. Finally, Adelaide spoke. I don't like him. Don't trust him. But the plan is sound, and we need something to counter what's coming. You think we should accept? Marsh asked. I think we should use him while we can. If he betrays us, we'll know what to do with traitors. The room went quiet. Adelaide's tone had been perfectly pleasant. The threat underneath was clear. Ashford actually smiled. I accept those terms. The cooperative bank was established within a month. Ashford proved as competent at organizing it as he'd been at investigating estates. Loans were offered, debts consolidated. When the consortium tried to pressure individual families, they found their leverage had evaporated. The retaliation came anyway. Trade routes suddenly became unreliable. Shipments to the estate were delayed or lost. Local merchants who'd done business with the tenants for years suddenly couldn't extend credit. They're isolating us, Catherine said during a strategy meeting. Make it too expensive to function. Force us to give up. We need alternate suppliers, Lydia said. Direct relationships with producers instead of going through middlemen they control. That would take time to establish. Then we start now. She was right. Lydia coordinated with Adelaide, who had connections throughout the region through her former students, to identify alternative suppliers. Farmers who'd sell direct. Craftsmen who'd trade goods instead of demanding cash. A parallel economy built around relationships instead of formal channels. It was messy and inefficient and absolutely necessary. You're building a resistance economy, Ashford observed one day, reviewing their supply chains. Impressive. We're surviving, Lydia corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I stand, you're doing more than surviving. You're proving their model doesn't work. Their model assumes we'll give up. We won't. No, Ashford agreed. I don't believe you will. The turning point came 6 weeks after the bank's establishment. Rowan was reviewing accounts when Catherine burst in, waving a newspaper. Read this, she demanded. Front page. He read, then read again, not quite believing. The headline, Land Reform Success, Blackmore Estate shows new model for tenant rights. The article detailed everything. The mineral rights transfers, the cooperative bank, the tenant partnerships. It painted the Blackmore Estate as a revolutionary experiment in shared ownership and mutual prosperity. Who wrote this? Rowan demanded. A journalist who's been investigating the consortium. Apparently someone sent him evidence. Catherine smiled. Someone who knew exactly what story would hurt them most. Ashford? He won't confirm, but the timing is convenient. The article changed everything. Suddenly other estates were asking questions. How did the cooperative bank work? Could mineral rights transfers be replicated? Journalists appeared, wanting interviews. Reform-minded nobles cited Blackmore as proof that change was possible. The consortium found itself defending practices they'd preferred to keep quiet, and Whitmore, who'd operated in shadows, was suddenly exposed to daylight. They'll come after us harder now, Lydia warned. This makes us a bigger threat. Let them come. We're ready. But the attack didn't come from the direction they expected. It came from Lydia's family. Catherine arrived 3 days after the article with terrible news. Vivian is here with your stepmother. They're demanding to see you. Lydia's blood went cold. Why? They claim you stole their rightful position, that the betrothal was meant for Vivian, and you manipulated your way into the Duke's favor. That's insane. They have documents, letters, supposedly proving Vivian was the intended bride and you sabotaged her. Rowan appeared in the doorway. They're trying to delegitimize you, make it look like everything we've built is based on fraud. It is based on fraud, Lydia's voice cracked. The betrothal papers were forged. But you didn't know that, and you didn't manipulate anything. They don't care about truth. They care about destroying what we've built. She sat down hard. If they prove I was never legitimately here, it undermines everything. The school, the cooperative, all of it becomes suspect. Then we don't let them prove it. How? They have documents, witnesses. My own stepmother will testify against me. Rowan knelt beside her chair. Lydia, look at me. She did. His eyes were steady. We've faced worse than this. We'll face this too. Together. They're my family. I'm your family. The tenants are your family. The children you teach are your family. Those people out there, he gestured toward the window. They're your family, not the ones who threw you away. But the legitimacy comes from what you've done, not what papers say. You've earned your place here 100 times over. Catherine cleared her throat. He's right. But we still need to handle this carefully. If they make their accusations publicly, then we make our truth public first, Lydia said suddenly. She stood, paced, her mind working. They want to paint me as a manipulator. Fine. Let's give them the real story. All of it. The forged papers, the rejection, how I ended up teaching school, the protest, everything. That's risky, Catherine began. Everything we've done is risky, but the truth is the truth. And people know me now. They've seen me work, seen me fight. They'll believe what they've witnessed over what my stepmother claims. Rowan stood. You want to confront them publicly? I want to stop running from my past. Stop letting them control the narrative. She turned to face them both. Catherine, you said the article changed things, made us visible. Let's use that. Tell the whole story. Not just the parts that sound good. The whole story includes your father's debts, your family's deception, things that could hurt you. Things that are true. I'm done hiding from truth. Catherine studied her. You've got steel in you, girl. Remind me never to cross you. Does that mean you'll help? It means I'll enjoy watching you destroy your stepmother's credibility, which I absolutely will help with. They crafted their response carefully, not a legal document. Those could be argued over and dismissed. A personal statement. Lydia's story, in her own words. She wrote it by hand. No lawyer's polish, just raw honesty about her father's failures, her stepmother's cruelty, the forged betrothal, the rejection, and everything that came after. This will hurt, Rowan warned. Some people will use it against you. I know, but I'd rather be hurt by truth than protected by lies. They released it the same day Vivian and Catherine Hartwell planned their public accusations. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Letters poured in. People who'd been rejected, thrown away, told they weren't good enough. They saw themselves in Lydia's story, saw hope in what she'd built from nothing. The journalist who'd written about the estate wrote a follow-up piece. From rejected bride to revolutionary, the real Lydia Hartwell. Vivian's accusations landed in a public sphere that had already decided Lydia was the hero of this story. It's not fair, Vivian wailed during a disastrous interview. I was supposed to be the duchess. She stole my life. The reporter's response was brutal. By all accounts, Miss Hartwell built a new life through hard work and courage. What exactly did she steal from you? Vivian had no answer. Catherine Hartwell tried a different approach. Claimed Lydia had always been manipulative, calculating, had planned everything from the beginning. The tenants responded en masse. Testimonials flooded newspapers, stories of Lydia standing up to the Duke, helping their children learn, fighting for people she had no obligation to protect. If that's manipulation, William Marsh told one reporter, then manipulate me all you want. She's done more good by accident than most nobles do on purpose. The narrative collapsed. Vivian and Catherine retreated in humiliation. 2 weeks later, Ashford appeared with news. The consortium is withdrawing, quietly. They've realized this estate is more trouble than it's worth. Rowan couldn't believe it. They're just giving up? They're cutting losses. The publicity made their methods visible. Other estates are copying your model. They've lost the advantage of operating in shadow. Ashford allowed himself a small smile. You've won, not completely. Whitmore will never admit defeat, but practically. They're moving on to easier targets. Catherine opened wine. To winning by refusing to lose. They drank. But the victory felt strange, incomplete. Something's wrong, Lydia said later when they were alone. This was too easy. Months of fighting was easy? The ending was, they just withdrew after everything? She shook her head. People like Whitmore don't give up. They regroup. Maybe we're just paranoid. Maybe. Or maybe... A knock at the door. Jenkins, looking worried. Your Grace, there's a gentleman here to see you. From London. He says it's urgent. The gentleman was young, well-dressed, and carried himself with the particular arrogance of someone who'd never been told no. Lord Blackmore, I'm Edmund Price. I represent certain interests in London. He didn't wait for invitation, just walked into the study like he owned it. I'm here to make you an offer. I'm not interested in selling. I'm not here to buy. I'm here to invest. Price pulled out documents. Your little experiment has attracted attention, the right kind. People who see profit in this new model you've created. What kind of investment? Capital, expertise, political connections, everything you need to expand this cooperative model to other estates. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. Why? Lydia asked from the doorway. Price turned. Ah, the famous Miss Hartwell. I was hoping to meet you. Answer the question. Why invest in us? Because you've proven something works, and there's money in things that work. He smiled. Imagine this model across 50 estates, 100. The profits from coordinated agricultural reform alone would be substantial. We're not doing this for profit, Rowan said. Of course not. You're doing it for noble reasons. Admirable. Price's smile didn't reach his eyes. But there's no reason nobility and profit can't align. Let us help you do more good, faster. Who exactly is us? Catherine had appeared somehow. She had an uncanny ability to materialize when sharks circled. Investors who prefer discretion. Whitmore's people, Lydia said flatly. Price's smile finally slipped. I don't know what... You're here because the consortium failed to stop us directly, so now they want to co-opt us. Take what we've built and turn it into another profit scheme. She walked toward him. The answer is no. You're making a mistake. We've made plenty of mistakes. This won't be one of them. She gestured to the door. Jenkins will show you out. After Price left, sputtering threats about regret and missed opportunities, Catherine started laughing. What's funny? Rowan asked. You. Both of you. She wiped her eyes. A year ago, you would have listened to his pitch, considered the advantages, probably accepted. Things change. No, people change. You changed. Catherine looked at Lydia. You changed him. We changed each other, Lydia corrected. Even better. Catherine raised her glass. To the people who refused to be bought. They drank to that. But late that night, alone with Rowan, Lydia voiced the worry that had been growing. They're not going to stop. Whitmore, the consortium, whoever Price really represents, they'll keep trying different approaches until something works. Then we'll keep saying no. What if saying no isn't enough? Rowan pulled her closer. Then we'll find another way, like we always do. I'm tired of fighting. I know, so am I. But we keep doing it anyway. Because it matters. Because the alternative is giving up. And neither of us knows how to do that. She laughed against his chest. We're both too stubborn for our own good. Perfect match, remember? They stood there in silence, drawing strength from each other, knowing the fight wasn't over, but having won enough battles to believe they could win the war. The next morning brought vindication from an unexpected source. A letter arrived, royal seal. Rowan opened it with shaking hands. Lord Blackmore, your innovative approaches to estate management have been noted at the highest levels. While unconventional, the results speak to their efficacy. His Majesty is pleased to formally recognize the Blackmore Cooperative Model as a valid framework for land reform. Other estates are encouraged to study and potentially adopt similar practices. Furthermore, recent allegations regarding certain officials' conduct in estate acquisitions are under investigation. His Majesty takes such matters seriously. Regards. Royal Secretary Rowan read it aloud 3 times before anyone spoke. Is that what I think it is? Lydia asked. The king just legitimized everything we've done and hung Whitmore out to dry. Catherine took the letter, examined the seal. This is real. You've won royal approval. We've won, Rowan corrected. All of us. They gathered everyone that afternoon. Tenants, school families, Adelaide, Ashford. The great hall was packed. Rowan read the letter to thunderous applause. This doesn't solve everything, he said when the noise died down. We still have work to do. The cooperative needs strengthening. The bank needs time to prove itself, but we've proven something important, that a different way is possible. More than possible, Marsh called out. Profitable. I made more this quarter than I have in 5 years. Others shouted agreement. Stories of improved yields, reduced debt, children staying in school instead of going to work. Adelaide stood. His Grace is being modest. What we've built here isn't just different, it's better. And the fact that powerful people tried to stop us proves we were doing something right. More applause. Lydia found herself pulled into conversation after conversation, people thanking her, sharing their own stories of transformation. Thomas appeared at her elbow. Miss Hartwell, I've been accepted to university. She stared. What? The scholarship program Ashford set up. I applied. They accepted me. His face split in a grin. I'm going to be an engineer, like I wanted. Lydia hugged him fiercely. I'm so proud of you. I wouldn't have tried if you hadn't believed I could. You did the work. You showed me it was possible. That's the same thing. Watching him walk away, this boy who'd been headed for the mines, now headed for something better, Lydia felt the weight of the past year lift slightly. They'd won. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. That night after everyone had gone, she found Rowan in the garden where they'd talked so many times before. Thinking? She asked. Remembering. That first day when you dropped the ring and walked away. I thought you were making a mistake. Maybe I was. No, you were saving both of us. I just didn't know it yet. He turned to face her. If you'd stayed that day, if you'd accepted the rejection quietly, none of this would exist. Someone else would have fought for them. Maybe. But it wouldn't have been the same. He took her hands. You taught me that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and fighting anyway. I learned that from you too. When you stood up to Ashford, when you gave away the mineral rights, when you chose truth over safety. We're both teachers then, and both students. He kissed her, soft and sure, a promise of partnership and equals and the future they'd built together. When they broke apart, Lydia smiled. The wedding is going to be complicated. Everyone will want to come. Then we'll have a big wedding, the whole estate. That's a lot of people. Good. They're our family. They should be there. She laughed. From rejected bride to community wedding. That's quite a journey. Best one I ever took. They stood in the garden, watching stars emerge in the clear night sky, knowing challenges remained but having proven they could face them together. Inside the manor, Catherine read through letters of congratulation and requests for information about the cooperative model. The world was changing, slowly, messily, but changing. And it had started with a girl who refused to accept rejection and a duke who learned to listen. Not a fairy tale ending, something better. A real one. A real one. But real didn't mean easy. The wedding was set for the first day of spring, symbolic, Catherine said, of new beginnings. Lydia thought it was just optimistic planning, considering how much could go wrong in 2 months. She was right. The first problem arrived a week after the royal letter. A delegation from 3 neighboring estates appeared unannounced, wanting to see the cooperative model firsthand. Not hostile, exactly. Just deeply skeptical. You're telling me your tenants own mineral rights? Lord Pemberton, no relation to the corrupt steward, unfortunately, looked at Rowan like he'd suggested farming with pixie dust. And this works? It does, Rowan said evenly. We can show you the records. I'd like to speak with the tenants themselves, No offense, but nobles have been known to embellish. So they arranged tours. William Marsh explained the cooperative bank. Adelaide walked them through the school's improvements. Lydia stayed in the background, taking notes, watching the visitors' faces shift from skepticism to reluctant interest. It's messier than I expected, one admitted over dinner. More complicated. Change is complicated, Catherine said. That's why most people avoid it. But it's working. See for yourself, the numbers don't lie. More visitors came. Some genuine, wanting to learn. Others sent by the consortium's remaining allies, looking for weaknesses to exploit. Lydia learned to spot the difference. The genuine ones asked about problems and failures, while the spies only wanted to hear about success, so they could later claim it was fabricated. This is exhausting, she told Rowan after a particularly grueling day of questions. I thought we won. Why are we still fighting? Because winning once doesn't mean staying won. It just means people are paying attention now. I miss when nobody paid attention. No, you don't. She laughed despite herself. No, I don't. But I'm allowed to complain about it. Absolutely, that's what partners do. The words still felt strange. Good strange. Like clothing that fit perfectly after years of wearing things too tight or too loose. Partners. Equals. Choosing each other every day instead of being forced together by circumstance. The second problem came from an unexpected direction, the wedding itself. Catherine had assumed they'd have a traditional ceremony, small, dignified, appropriate for a duke marrying a schoolteacher of questionable pedigree. Lydia had different ideas. I want the tenants there, she said firmly. All of them, and the school families, and at Adelaide, and Ashford if he wants to come. That's nearly 200 people, Catherine said. Where would we even hold it? The church won't fit everyone. Then we don't use the church. We do it outside. In the fields. Catherine stared. You want to get married in a field? I want to get married surrounded by the people who matter, who fought for this with us. Yes, that means a field. Rowan, please tell your fiancé this is insane, Rowan looked between them. It's unconventional. See? Catherine said triumphantly. I like it. Of course you do. Catherine threw up her hands. Fine. Field wedding. I'll inform the vicar he'll be performing a ceremony outdoors like some sort of traveling preacher. Thank you, Lydia said sweetly. Don't thank me. Thank whoever has to organize this chaos. That turned out to be Lydia herself, with help from Adelaide and a committee of tenant wives who threw themselves into planning with terrifying enthusiasm. We'll need tables for the feast, Mrs. Marsh announced. I'll organize building them. And decorations, someone else added. Flowers from everyone's gardens. Music. We need music. Thomas plays fiddle. My brother plays pipe. The planning spiraled into joyful chaos. Lydia tried to keep up, making lists and assignments, but the women had their own momentum now. Just let it happen, Adelaide advised. You gave them permission to care. Now they're caring at full volume. It's a lot. It's family. Family is always a lot. Meanwhile, Rowan was dealing with a different kind of chaos. The legal intricacies of marrying someone whose previous betrothal had been fraudulent. Technically, the lawyer explained, since the original betrothal documents were forged, there's question about whether you need special dispensation. We're getting married, Rowan interrupted. Whatever paperwork that requires, do it. Yes, Your Grace, but there's also the matter of Miss Hartwell's legal status. Her father's debts are settled. I paid them. The lawyer blinked. When? 2 weeks ago, quietly, through intermediaries. Your Grace, that was necessary. I won't have Lydia's past used against her. She doesn't know, does she? Catherine asked later. No. You should tell her. Why? The debts are gone. That's what matters. Because secrets between partners are poison, even well-intentioned ones. Rowan knew she was right. Told Lydia that night over dinner. You what? Lydia set down her fork carefully. I paid off your father's debts. The ones Catherine mentioned were still outstanding. Without asking me. I knew you'd refuse. Of course I'd refuse. Those aren't your debts to pay. They were being used as leverage against you. So you decided to handle it yourself? Make the problem go away without telling me? Her voice rose. Do you understand how that looks? How that feels? I was trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need a partner who respects me enough to include me in decisions that affect my life. They stared at each other across the table. The first real fight since they'd gotten engaged. You're right, Rowan said finally. I should have told you. Asked first. I saw a problem and wanted to fix it. My life isn't a problem for you to fix. I know that, I do. But old habits... He stopped, started again. I'm still learning, still making mistakes. So ask me. Next time something like this comes up, ask. Don't just decide what's best for me. I will. I promise. Lydia's anger faded slightly. How much did you pay? Does it matter? Yes. Because if you bankrupted yourself for my father's gambling debts, we have a different conversation ahead. I didn't bankrupt myself, but it wasn't insignificant. She closed her eyes. I'll pay you back. Lydia, I will, eventually, even if it takes years. We're about to be married. What's mine is yours. What's mine is mine. And my father's mistakes are mine to fix, not yours to erase with money. She opened her eyes. I mean it, Rowan. I'll pay you back. All right, if that's important to you. It is. They finished dinner in tense silence, but that night Lydia found him in the study. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? You just spent an hour angry at me? For caring enough to try, even if you tried wrong. She sat beside him. I know you meant well. I just need you to remember I'm not something to be managed. I'm someone to be consulted. I'm working on remembering that. I know. That's why I'm here instead of still angry in my room. They sat together, not quite comfortable, but working toward it, learning the rhythms of partnership, which were messier than romance, but more real. The third problem arrived a month before the wedding, in the form of Vivian. She appeared at the schoolhouse during lessons, dressed in traveling clothes and looking miserable. I need to talk to you, she told Lydia. I'm teaching. Please, it's important. Lydia looked at Adelaide, who shrugged. We'll manage. Go. They walked to the small office behind the classroom. Vivian perched on the edge of a chair like she might flee at any moment. Mother doesn't know I'm here, she said. She'd kill me if she found out. Then why are you here? To apologize. Vivian twisted her hands. For the accusations. The claims that you stole my life, all of it. I'm sorry. Lydia hadn't expected that. Why now? Because I've been miserable. Mother's been dragging me to every estate with unmarried sons, trying to find me a match. But after what happened with you and the Duke, after the newspapers, no one wants me. Vivian's voice broke. They all think I'm just like Mother, calculating and cruel. And maybe I am, but I didn't. I never meant... Take a breath. Vivian did, shakily. You were always nicer to me than I deserved. After Father died, when Mother was awful to you, you never fought back. Fighting back wouldn't have changed anything. Maybe not, but you could have. Could have made me as miserable as Mother made you. Instead, you just left. Vivian looked up. And built something better. Something real. While I'm still stuck in Mother's world, being paraded around like livestock. Lydia sat down. What do you want, Vivian? I don't know. To say I'm sorry, I suppose. And to tell you if there's anything you need me to say publicly about the betrothal, about Mother's lies, I will. I'll testify to whatever helps. Why would you do that? Catherine would disown you. She's going to anyway. I'm a failure. Can't catch a husband, can't be proper enough, can't do anything right. Vivian laughed bitterly. At least if I help you, I'll have done something that matters. Lydia studied her half-sister, saw past the performance to the exhaustion underneath. Vivian wasn't cruel like Catherine. She was just weak, bent by pressure until she couldn't stand straight. I don't need testimony, Lydia said. The truth is already out. But if you want to escape Catherine, I might be able to help with that. How? We need teachers. The school is expanding. Adelaide has more students than she can handle alone. If you're serious about wanting to do something that matters, you'd let me teach? After everything? Adelaide would let you teach. If you prove you're serious, if you actually work instead of just talking about it. Lydia leaned forward. It's hard, Vivian. Harder than anything Catherine has you doing. The children don't care about your manners or your family name. They care if you can help them learn. Can you do that? Vivian was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, but I'd like to try. Then talk to Adelaide. She'll decide if you're worth the chance. Adelaide was skeptical but willing. 1 week trial, she told Vivian. You work a full schedule, no complaints, no special treatment. At the end, I'll decide if you stay. Vivian lasted 3 days before breaking down in tears. This is impossible. The children won't listen. I can't control them. You can't control anyone, Adelaide said flatly. That's not what teaching is. You have to earn their attention, their respect. Can you do that? I don't know how. Then learn. Watch Lydia. Watch me. Figure it out or leave. Vivian stayed, barely. By the end of the week, she'd managed to get through a single lesson without anyone throwing things or running out. Adelaide called it progress. She's useless, Adelaide told Lydia later. But she's trying, and trying counts for something. Will you keep her? For now, but she's your problem if she fails. Lydia smiled. Deal. The fourth problem came from Rowan's side. His extended family finally decided to weigh in. An Aunt Lydia had never met sent a scathing letter about inappropriate marriages and ducal dignity. 3 cousins appeared unannounced, clearly sent to talk sense into Rowan. You can't marry a schoolteacher, one said bluntly. It's beneath your station. My station is none of your concern, Rowan replied. The family name will survive. The estate will survive. Your concern is noted and dismissed. But Rowan, gentlemen, I'm going to marry Lydia whether you approve or not. Your choice is whether to attend the wedding and be part of this family's future or stay away and be irrelevant to it. Which would you prefer? They chose attendance, though they looked unhappy about it. Catherine was delighted. You're getting better at that. At what? Telling people to sod off politely. It's an essential skill for nobility. The wedding preparations intensified as spring approached. The field chosen for the ceremony was cleared and prepared. Tables were built, flowers were gathered and arranged. The vicar agreed to perform the ceremony outdoors, though he muttered about propriety the entire time. This will be memorable, he said, though perhaps not in ways the church prefers. Perfect, Lydia said. 3 days before the wedding, Ashford requested a private meeting. I wanted you to know, he said, that the investigation into Whitmore has concluded. He's being removed from his position, quietly to avoid scandal, but removed nonetheless. And the consortium? Rowan asked. Disbanded. Some members face charges. Others simply disappeared. Ashford allowed himself a thin smile. You've won. Completely. The model you created is being studied by parliamentary committees. There's talk of legislation to encourage similar reforms on other estates. That was never the goal, I know, but it's the result. You changed something larger than just your estate, whether you meant to or not. After Ashford left, Lydia found Rowan staring out the window. What are you thinking? She asked. That we stumbled into this. We were just trying to survive, and somehow we ended up changing policy. Scared. Terrified. What if we got lucky? What if the next challenge breaks everything we built? Then we'll build something else. She took his hand. Stop looking for disasters. We've fought enough of them. Can we just be happy for a while? I'm happy now. Are you? Because you look worried. I'm always worried. It's my default state. Then I'll have to work on that after the wedding. After the wedding, we'll have 200 people expecting us to have answers for everything. We'll figure it out, like we always do. The wedding day arrived with perfect spring weather, warm sun, clear skies, flowers blooming across the fields. Lydia woke early in the room she'd occupied since returning to the estate, no longer the rejected bride, but something else entirely. Adelaide appeared with breakfast. Eat. You'll need energy for today. I'm too nervous to eat. Eat anyway. Brides who faint during ceremonies are traditional, but it's a stupid tradition. Lydia managed bread and tea while Adelaide fussed over her dress. Not the fancy creation Catherine had initially suggested. Lydia had vetoed that immediately. But something simpler. Blue wool, well-made but practical. A dress she could actually wear again. You look perfect, Adelaide said. I look like a schoolteacher. You are a schoolteacher who's marrying a duke. Both things can be true. Vivian appeared at the door, hesitant. "Can I come in?" Lydia nodded. "I brought these." Vivian held out a cluster of wildflowers. "For your hair, if you want them." "I want them, thank you." Vivian helped arrange the flowers while Adelaide watched with approval. "There, now you look like a bride." The ceremony was set for noon. Lydia walked to the field with Adelaide and Vivian on either side, feeling like she might shake apart from nerves. The field was transformed. Tables arranged in a large circle, leaving space in the center for the ceremony. Flowers everywhere, on tables, hanging from poles, woven into garlands. 200 people filled the space, tenant families and school children and neighbors who'd become friends. At the center stood Rowan, dressed simply, looking as nervous as she felt. The vicar began the ceremony. Traditional words about duty and honor and lifelong commitment. Lydia barely heard them. She was focused on Rowan's face, on the way his hand shook slightly when he took hers. "Do you, Rowan Alexander Blackmore, take this woman?" "I do." "As your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "I said I do." Quiet laughter from the crowd. "And do you, Lydia Margaret Hartwell?" "I do." "You haven't heard the question yet." "Don't care, I do." More laughter. The vicar gave up on formality and rushed through the rest. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may—" Rowan kissed her before he finished. The crowd erupted in cheers. When they broke apart, Lydia was crying. Happy tears, which she hadn't expected. "You all right?" Rowan asked. "Perfect. You?" "Terrified, but perfect." The feast that followed was chaos in the best way. Food from every family's kitchen, nothing fancy, but abundant and made with care. Music from fiddles and pipes. Dancing that started formal and devolved into enthusiastic stomping. Thomas appeared with a cup of ale. To the Duke and Duchess, who proved that being proper is overrated. "I'll drink to that," Rowan said. Children ran between tables. Adults argued about crop rotation and bank policies and school curricula. Catherine held court at one end, telling stories that made people laugh so hard they cried. Adelaide found Lydia during a quiet moment. "You did it." "We did it." "No, you. You took rejection and turned it into revolution. That's all you." "I had help." "Of course you did. But you were the one who refused to stay down, who fought when fighting was scary, who chose courage over comfort." Adelaide squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you. Your mother would be proud of you." Lydia's throat tightened. "Thank you for everything, for giving me a chance when no one else would." "You gave yourself the chance. I just provided the venue." As sunset approached, Rowan stood and called for quiet. "I'm not good at speeches," he began, "but I wanted to say something before the day ends." The crowd settled, curious. "A year ago, I was failing at everything that mattered. I had wealth and title, but no purpose. No real connection to the land or the people depending on me. I was a duke in name only." He looked at Lydia. "Then someone showed up who refused to let me hide from that, who demanded I be better, not for her sake, but for everyone's sake, including mine. This," he gestured to the gathered crowd, "is what happens when we choose courage over comfort, when we listen instead of dictate, when we build together instead of trying to control everything alone. So thank you, all of you, for taking a chance on this experiment, for working harder than you should have had to, for believing that change was possible when I was still learning to believe it myself." He raised his cup. "To partnership, in all its forms." "To partnership," the crowd echoed. The celebration continued into the night. When it finally wound down, Lydia and Rowan walked back to the manor together, exhausted and happy. "That was perfect," Lydia said. "It was chaos." "Same thing." They climbed the stairs to rooms that were now officially theirs together instead of separately. "What happens tomorrow?" Lydia asked. "Tomorrow we wake up married and figure out what that means." "And after that?" "After that we keep doing what we've been doing. Making mistakes, learning, building something better." "That's not very romantic." "It's honest. Isn't that better?" "Yes," she admitted. "It is." They went to sleep that night with work still ahead and challenges still coming, but having proven to themselves and everyone else that they were strong enough to face whatever came next. Together. 3 months later, Lydia stood in front of the expanded school, now 2 buildings instead of 1, funded by cooperative profits, and watched students file in for morning lessons. Vivian taught the younger children now, having proven herself capable over weeks of hard work. She'd never be brilliant at it, but she cared, and that counted for something. Adelaide taught the older students, preparing several for university exams that would have been impossible a year ago. And Lydia managed it all while also helping Rowan with estate administration. Not as his assistant, as his partner, with equal say in decisions. The cooperative bank was thriving. 3 more estates had adopted similar models. Parliamentary committees were drafting legislation. It wasn't perfect. There were still struggles, bad harvests, personality conflicts, resistance from traditionalists. But they faced those struggles together, with systems and relationships built to handle them. Rowan appeared beside her, carrying papers. The yield reports are in. We're up another 12%. That's excellent. Ashford wants to write about it, document the process for other estates. Let him. We've got nothing to hide. No, Rowan agreed. We don't. They stood together, watching children learn and families thrive, and a community grow stronger through shared purpose. Do you ever think about that first day? Lydia asked. When you rejected me? Every day. Regret it? Only the cruelty of how I did it, not the outcome. He took her hand. If I'd married you that day, we'd both be miserable. You'd be trapped in a role you'd hate. I'd still be blind to everything that mattered. Instead, we got this. Instead, we got this, he agreed. Which is better than anything I imagined back then. Emma, the little girl who'd asked why the Duke rejected Lydia all those months ago, ran up. Miss Hartwell, Miss Vivian says I can't be good at mathematics because I'm a girl. Tell her she's wrong. Lydia smiled. Let's all tell her she's wrong. Together. They walked into the school, into the noise and chaos and beautiful mess of people learning and growing and becoming more than anyone expected. That night, Lydia updated her journal, a habit she'd started to track the cooperative's progress, but which had become more personal over time. 1 year ago today, I stood in the rain and chose dignity over security, chose myself over what others said I should be. I thought I was choosing nothing, thought I was walking into darkness with no plan and no hope. Instead, I was choosing everything, the work that matters, the people who care, the partnership that changes both of us daily. Rowan asked today if I'm happy. I told him happiness is too simple a word for this. I'm challenged, exhausted, frustrated, scared of failing the people depending on us. But I'm also alive in ways I never was before. Building instead of surviving. Creating instead of enduring. If that's what comes from refusing to be rejected quietly, I'll choose loud rejection every time. She closed the journal as Rowan entered, carrying tea. Writing again? He asked. Recording, for when we forget why we started this. I could never forget. You won't let me. Someone has to keep you honest. And I'm grateful for it. He set down the tea. Catherine sent a letter. 3 more estates want consultations on cooperative models. Do we have time for that? We'll make time. This is too important not to share. Lydia thought about that. How something born from desperation and spite had become a movement. How rejection had transformed into revolution. We should write a manual, she said, for estates wanting to try this. Not just theory, practical steps, problems we faced, solutions we found. That would take months. Then it takes months. We've got time. They spent the evening planning, arguing good-naturedly about what to include, laughing at memories of early disasters that didn't seem funny at the time. This was marriage, Lydia realized. Not the fantasy of constant romance, but the reality of constant partnership. Working together toward shared goals, disagreeing and compromising and finding new ways forward, better than any alternative she could imagine. 6 months after the wedding, they hosted a gathering of reform-minded nobles and estate managers. 50 people attended to study the Blackmore model firsthand. Lydia gave a presentation about the school improvements. Rowan explained the cooperative bank. William Marsh discussed mineral rights distribution. Adelaide talked about community investment in education. Questions came rapidly, some skeptical, some genuine, all intense. This only works because you're small, one lord argued. You can't scale this to larger estates. We thought that too, Rowan admitted, but the principles scale. Shared ownership, mutual benefit, It's not about size, it's about structure. But the risk is less than continuing current practices, which demonstrably don't work for most people involved. The debates continued for hours. By evening, half the attendees were convinced. A quarter remained skeptical. The rest were thinking about it. Not bad, Catherine assessed later. You converted more than I expected. We'll see if any of them actually implement changes, Rowan said. Some will. That's how movements work. One person tries, then another. Eventually it's normal instead of radical. That night, Lydia walked the estate grounds alone. Not because she was unhappy, but because she needed to remember how far they'd come. The fields were healthy. The tenant cottages had been repaired and expanded. Children's laughter echoed from the school even after lessons ended. They stayed because they wanted to, not because they had to. She found the spot where she'd stood in the rain a year and a half ago, where she'd dropped the ring and walked away. Different person now. Different life. Different future. The ring was long gone. Rowan had offered to retrieve it, but Lydia had refused. That ring represented what she was supposed to be, what others wanted her to be. The ring she wore now, simple gold, no stones, represented what she chose to be. The difference mattered. There you are. Rowan appeared beside her. I was worried. Just remembering. This spot specifically? This moment, when I chose myself over what everyone else wanted. Best decision you ever made. Second best. She took his hand. The best was letting you try again, giving us a chance to do it right. We're still doing it right, every day. Every day, she agreed. They stood together as stars emerged, two people who'd rejected the lives they were supposed to live and built something better instead. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and meaningful and entirely theirs. 5 years later, Lydia stood in Parliament, the first woman invited to testify about land reform. She was terrified, had thrown up twice that morning, but Adelaide's voice echoed in her head. Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing it anyway. She testified for 3 hours, answered hostile questions, defended the cooperative model, showed evidence of transformed communities and improved lives. The committee approved preliminary legislation. Not everything she'd hoped for, but enough to make a difference. Rowan was waiting outside. How'd it go? They didn't throw me out. That's something. That's everything. You just changed policy for the entire country. We changed it, all of us. You spoke for all of us. That's leadership. Lydia thought about that word. Leader. It didn't fit comfortably. She was still a school teacher at heart. Still someone who preferred working with individuals over managing crowds. But leadership wasn't about comfort. It was about doing what needed doing, even when it was scary. Just like that first day when she'd walked away from security into uncertainty. She'd been terrified then too, and she'd done it anyway. That night, they returned to Ironridge. The estate was thriving now, profitable, sustainable, supporting 300 families instead of slowly collapsing under its own weight. The school had expanded to 4 buildings. The cooperative bank served 12 estates. The model they'd created had been replicated in 23 locations across the country. And at the center of it all, 2 people who'd started as a rejected bride and an arrogant duke and had become something neither of them expected. Partners. Equals. Proof that courage and choice could rewrite destiny. What do you think? Rowan asked as they looked over the estate. Did we do all right? We did better than all right. We did something that matters. Think we can keep doing it? I think we don't have a choice. Too many people depending on us now. Scared? Always, Lydia admitted, but I've learned to work scared. It's easier with you beside me. Same. They went inside together, to a home they'd built through choice rather than obligation, surrounded by a community they'd served rather than ruled, facing a future they'd create together, one brave decision at a time. And somewhere in the distance, a girl in muddy boots dropped a ring in a puddle and walked away from rejection toward everything she'd never dared to hope for. The story didn't end there. Stories like this never really end. But that moment, that choice, was where everything began. Where courage defeated fear. Where choice defeated obligation. Where 2 imperfect people refused to accept the lives they were handed and built something better instead. Not a fairy tale. Something real. And real, it turned out, was better than any fantasy could ever be.